Good afternoon, everyone. This is the August 16th, 2022 meeting of the California Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee. Thank you for your patience this afternoon. We're sorry for technical difficulties, but we're glad that we're broadcasting now. And welcome to everyone who's online. We have some initial business to cover with staff. And when it's time for attendees to participate, you will receive instructions on how to add yourself to the queue for speaking. As we did at the last tribal committee meeting, videos are enabled for everyone. Feel free to turn on your video if you would like, but it is certainly not required. Melissa will provide an overview of how to participate in this new hybrid meeting format. And by the way, for anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jackie Hostler-Carmson. I've been on the Fish and Game Commission since 2013, and we began with an ad hoc committee that was able to become codified in legislation. So we're very excited about the progress we've made. We know there needs to be a lot more progress. But it's my honor to be here today. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa for technical information.
Thank you, Chair Hostler-Carmson. Thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership over the years prior to ever having a tribal committee in statute, and then now as the chair officially under California Fish and Game Code. Would like to note for folks who may not be aware that today is just our second in-person committee meeting since March of 2020. So I'm going to repeat that. Since March of 2020. It was a while ago. Only our second in-person committee meeting. It's pretty exciting to be here today and to be here with all of you to talk about issues of concerns to California's tribes and tribal communities. So while we resume the in-person component, we are also continuing to offer an option for participation via Zoom or phone. Our physical location today is the Tishnah Community Center on sovereign lands of the Bearwood Band in Mobile, Metrovia, and our sincerest thanks to the tribe for allowing us to be here today. Our tribal committee chair, Hostler-Carmson, is present, and we have Commission Vice President Loleta joining us virtually, along with multiple staff from the commission and the department, and the Commission's Tribal Advisor and Liaison, Chuck Strickland. If you are participating in the Zoom meeting online and calling in by phone, so doing both, please make sure that your phone number and your online Zoom meeting are linked. If you log into Zoom first and use the call me option, that linkage happens automatically. If you called in using another option, find the mute button at the bottom of the screen and click on the arrow to the right. That'll bring up a menu where you can select switch to phone audio. You will see a dialog box with a 4-digit number, and on your phone, press pound, that 4-digit number, and pound again, and that will link your phone audio to your online Zoom meeting. If you're joining by phone only, so you've only called in by phone, you're not on the Zoom on your computer or device, and wish to contribute to an agenda item, staff will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Zoom's chat feature will allow you to ask the host questions, and staff will be monitoring chat and responding to questions as much as possible. You, as Chair Hostler-Carmson indicated, are welcome to turn on your video if you'd like, but it is not required. And for those who are participating here in person in the room, just please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by Chair Hostler-Carmson. And we do have a microphone. If you could please make sure to use that. And as you're speaking, and reminder for myself, you're going to have to speak more loudly than you might want to or that you think is appropriate for this room, because our audio for those who are online is actually through the speakerphone up here at the front of the room. And so we do need the louder voices to be heard through that speakerphone. Thank you, Chair Hostler-Carmson.
Thank you, Melissa. And now I would like to welcome and introduce Vice President Erica Zavaleta. Good afternoon, Erica.
Hello, Commissioner Hostler-Carmson. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, but we're going to work on that.
Okay. Sounds good.
As previously mentioned, Erica is the Vice President of the Fish and Game Commission. And it's just a real honor to work with you, Erica, and I'm glad you were able to join today.
Can you ever try again?
Testing, 1, 2,
Erica.
3.
Erica.
Erica, can you speak again?
Sure. Hi, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm on the other end of the continent today, but delighted to see that there are so many people in the room today and eager to learn from you all and with you all.
Thank you, Vice President Erica. And now, before we start on the agenda, on the behalf of the Fish and Game Commission and staff and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Bear River and Wiyot people, and to pay my respects to elders, both past and present. I would also like to take a minute and express our appreciation to the tribal chairwoman, Josefina Cortez, Vice Chairman Eileen Meyer, the Tribal Council, tribal elders, and tribal members, and thank the Bear River Band of Ronerville Rancheria. It is an honor to be here and to be able to hold our meetings on tribal sovereign lands. Is there any Bear River representatives in the room right now? Would you introduce yourself, please?
Welcome, everybody, and I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Earl Moon. I am tribal treasurer here at Bear River, and we gladly having to have the opportunity to have this meeting here on our tribal lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. The work that Bear River has accomplished is amazing, and we congratulate the tribe on your accomplishments and success in all areas, including tribal government, programs, facilities, and economic development. This work exemplifies Indian self-determination and brings hope to all tribes in California and the nation. So thank you, Bear River, and thank you everyone for attending today. And just a little bit more to reiterate, by hosting more of the agency meetings in the Indian country, we hope to strengthen the ties between the state and California tribal nations, not only to overcome historic injustices, but also to work more collaboratively in healing our environment and ensuring tribal access to traditional lands and resources over the coming decades. And now we'd like to do introductions. We invite tribal leaders and attendees to introduce themselves. And first we'll go around the table here. And for those of you attending online, you may raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand feature, or if you're using a phone by pressing 9, star 9, I believe. Only one time. If you press star 9 again, you will remove yourself from the queue. I will call your name, and when introducing yourself, please state your name, title, and your tribal affiliation. You may turn on your video if you would like, but it is not required. We'll start with any tribal leadership in attendance, and then move to tribal citizens and members of the public. And I'm going to ask you, Chuck, to call the names online when it's time. So maybe we can start again with you, Earl.
Again, my name is Earl Moon. I am Bear River Rancheria member. I am on council as treasurer. Also in liaison for the Fish and Wildlife Commission here at Bear River. We are just getting started, so we're really excited to get our feet in the water so to speak, to get this thing going. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Montez. I'm a tribal elder and the Chico for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians located in Lakeport, California. There are 7 tribes, bands and Pomos, which is not our name originally. So we're going back to our own names. We believe that there are issues that feet have been dragged, and it's causing serious problems that's affecting our tribe and our communities. And we'll discuss that a little later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Welcome.
Yes, my name is Joe Weber. I'm from Big Valley Rancheria. As a community chairman and tribal member.
I am Sarah Ryan, the environmental director for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians.
Hi, I'm Carrington Hilson. I'm the elk research biologist for the North Coast with California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Freeze, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, as a Lands and Wildlife Program Supervisor for the Northern Region as coastal zones.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris McLeod, and I'm the Big Valley Rancheria Tribal Treasurer, and I'm pleased to be here with you all.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm Ruthie Maloney with REM Consulting and North Coast Native Protectors. I'm also the North Coast Tribal Representative for the Marine Protected Area Decadal Management Review that's being done. So I'd really love to get everybody's information so that I can get your comments and feedback. So thank you. And I'm a Yurok tribal member. Welcome, Ruthie. Thank you. Yeah, just go ahead and pass it.
Hi everyone, my name is Luis Santana. I'm a fisheries biologist for Robinson Rancheria.
Hi, Katie. My name is Alice Lincoln Cook, and I'm the chair for the California Indian Basque Weavers Association. Janine Pfeiffer, I work with Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians.
Tomas Jurgensen, environmental director for Robinson Rancheria. I'm tribal member of Scotts Valley Band of Pomo, Yamaba, and from the Dene Nation.
Jay Mars. I'm a Big Valley Rancheria native.
Hello, I'm Alicia Castellanos. I work at Big Valley Rancheria EPA department. I'm also a Big Valley Rancheria tribal member.
Hello, I'm Alex Tyler. I work for Big Valley Rancheria, and I'm the Water Resources Program Manager.
Hello, my name is Jane Sonnenfeld. I'm an elder at Big Valley Rancheria. I'm Melanie Simon, elder of the Middletown Rancheria.
Hello, I'm Christina Lord, Middletown Rancheria Tribal Council Treasurer.
Ruben Buddy, Big Valley Rancheria.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wendell Freeman. I'm the Assistant Tribal Administrator here at Bear River and an enrolled member of the Bear River Band. Nice to see you all here.
Just a shout out to Wendell. Thank you, Wendell, for coming, and thank you for all of your help and coordination with the hosting today. Wendell and I have worked together for a number of years on transportation issues, so it's really great to see him in his role as administrator. Thank you, Wendell.
And maybe if we can move to some introductions from folks joining us online. I know there are several federal elected officials joining us. So maybe we could start with asking those elected officials online to raise your hand, and we'll go down the list. Fred Briones.
Hello, sorry I can't start my video. My name is Fred Briones, chemist, MBA, CEO of the Native American Fiber Program, and tribal member at the Big Valley Rancheria Band of Pomo Indians. And I'm also a hunter and a fisherman and a basket weaver. And so I'm constantly out in our wetlands, and I noticed that our water now, the water level is going down. So as a hunter and a fisherman, it very concerns me. So that's why I attend this meeting. And I hope this is the impactful meeting that we start making change for our hitch and ask tough questions, especially of other agriculture and environmental things that are happening in the reduction of our water. It is our water. So I hope that going forward that we could be more conscious in our conservation ways, as our baskets now that hardly there's no more access to materials. And then now the fish that we used to use our baskets to catch the fish with, now there's no more fish. And that's very alarming to the next generation. I myself have been hunting and gathering for many years now along Clear Lake. And now I hope this is the meeting that we talk about saving our hitch. Thank you.
Let's move on to Chairman Gomez.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Philip Gomez, Chairman of Big Valley Rancheria, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have other elected tribal officials on the call online?
Good afternoon. This is Rick Warner with Elk Valley Rancheria, Tribal Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Warner. Any other elected officials on Zoom? Go ahead and speak up, raise your hand. Okay, we're going to move through. We would like to give folks an opportunity to introduce yourselves. So as I call your name, if you could unmute yourself, you're welcome to turn your camera on, but just offer a very brief introduction, name, tribe, position, and we'll move through the list. We have about 47 folks on. So let's move through this, starting with Adam Harper. You may have to unmute yourself, Adam.
Did you say Ellen?
Adam.
Adam. Okay, I think that's me. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Sanders Rigosa. I'm from the Paskenta Band of Nomlaki, and I currently work with the California Central Coast Joint Venture and the American Bird Conservancy.
Thanks, Ellen. And I'm just going to revise the process again here real quickly. Please raise your hand if you would like to introduce yourself, and we'll move through the list like that. We have a lot of department and other agency staff on here, so rather than trying to filter through people, we'll just introduce those folks that would like to introduce themselves at the start. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and dive into the first agenda item. I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, Tom Matter, go ahead.
everyone. My name is Tom Batter. I am the elk and pronghorn program coordinator with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Happy to be here with y'all today and join this discussion.
Thanks, Scott. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Gardner, and I'm the Wildlife Branch Chief for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Sorry, I'm not there in person. We've got a number of staff that are going to give you some updates today. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Go ahead, Craig.
Good afternoon. I'm Craig Schumann, the Regional Manager with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Region. Happy to be here.
Becky Oda.
Hi, everyone. Becky Oda with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Region. I am the Habitat Conservation Program Manager and definitely glad to be with you guys here today. And hi, Ruthie.
Thanks, Becky. Emma Lance.
Hi, I'm Emma Lance. I'm one of the wildlife veterinarians with the Wildlife Health Lab out of California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Thanks, Emma. Joe Coteau.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Coteau. I'm a program manager in the Northern Region. I'm one of the 2 tribal liaisons for Tina Bartlett in the Northern Region, and I'll be giving a couple updates today on Milo Baker's lupin and sport fishing regulations on the Klamath. Talk to you in a few minutes. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Brett Furness.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Furness. I'm also with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'll be giving an update in a bit on our black bear management plan and talking about our outreach to tribes and interest in getting feedback from the tribes. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Anyone else from the department, other agencies, tribes? Raise your hands.
I'm sorry, this is Isabel Bear, and I don't know how to raise my hand. I am the Environmental Program Manager for the Native Plant Program with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I'll be giving you a brief update on Joshua Tree listing. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel. Rebecca Flores Miller.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Flores Miller. I am an environmental scientist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Region, and I'll be providing an update on kelp and marine algae harvest management.
And if I may bother our executive director to introduce our staff present in the room and give other department staff here in the room a chance after that.
Thank you, Chuck. Chuck Strickland, of course, our tribal advisor and liaison. Sitting to his left, not right, is our marine advisor, Susan Ashcraft. Sitting to Chair Hustler Carmerson's right is our wildlife advisor, Artie Corman. At the front of the room here, we have our staff services analyst, Cynthia McKeith. My left is Kimmy Rogers, and then we have a number of staff online who are helping us behind the scenes to manage the meeting, and a big thanks to them for that.
And our department colleagues, thank you, Melissa. Kristen, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fonseca. I'm with the department and I'm a tribal cultural resource specialist.
Along with Chris Stoops, citizen, Cherokee Nation, tribal liaison for enforcement, and assistant chief for administration.
Thank you both. And not seeing anyone else online, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to your chair.
So thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and move into our first agenda item, which is to approve the agenda in the order of the items. Vice President Erica, do you have any proposed changes to the agenda?
Thank you, Commissioner Hostler Carmison. No changes from me at this time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I do actually have a request from several tribes from the Clear Lake region to address the committee during the general public comment period, several of whom are here in person as they've introduced themselves. If I might propose now that we moved the general public comment period to the start of the meeting, hear from the tribes about Clear Lake Hitch for approximately 15 minutes, then ask for any additional comments from those in attendance on items not on the agenda. And then we can also ask for any closing comments or thoughts at the end of the meeting. Does that sound good? Okay, and for tribes in attendance who may want to recommend changes to the agenda of future meetings, you're welcome to bring them up during today's general public comment item, or reach out directly to me, the tribal advisory liaison, at any time. And if you would like to discuss any of the items on today's agenda, please speak now if you want to propose any changes. Again, if you're on the computer, use the raise hand button. Or if you're on the phone, please press *9.
And Chuck, if I may, for those who are on the computer, the press to raise hand button is now under reactions, I believe. So it's not in the place where it used to be. So if you go to reactions, and you'll see raise hand under that.
Okay. Not seeing any comments on today's agenda. After we hear from the Clear Lake tribes for the remaining agenda items, we'll generally call for speakers here at Bear River first, then participants on Zoom. However, committee meetings are designed to accommodate thorough discussion of items on the agenda, so we'll certainly be flexible in managing the meeting and the discussions.
Yes, we'd like to go ahead and start your presentation, Sarah, if you would, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Sarah Ryan, the Environmental Director for the Big Valley Band of Former Indians. Tribes have prioritized the hitch, and for the next 15 minutes or so, you'll be hearing from people from multiple tribes, bringing this up, traveling all of this way, to let you know that we care about the hitch, and we want the state to do as much as they can to protect the hitch. The federal listing has not happened. The state did list the Clear Lake hitch to protect them, and we are very grateful for that. But with the federal listing, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said that enough is being done at the state level and local level to protect these hitch. And yet biologists from both the CDFW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service say that the hitch will be extinct in 5 years unless some very large measures happen. So we are here to basically let you know that the hitch are in dire straits in Clear Lake. They are not surviving into adulthood because they spawn in the creeks. The creeks are going dry, they're getting stranded, there are rescues that have to happen. We have people who are going to be speaking about that today. There are also water quality issues that are contributing to their deaths. We have dissolved oxygen at less than 1 parts per million, and it needs to be at least 5 for warm water fish to be healthy. We have toxins that have built up, cyanotoxins that have built up in the fish tissue. If you go to bvrancheria.com/clearlake cyanotoxins, you can see our fish study where we looked at cyanotoxins in fish tissue, including the hitch. We have high levels of, I can't even consume it in subsistence consumption, with high levels of cyanotoxin in the hitch. We have, fortunately, Director Bonham is interested in government consultation with Big Valley Band of Former Indians, and that is taking place next week. We're very appreciative of that, and we look forward to talking with him and working with the state to come up with the things that need to happen to protect these fish before it's too late. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Weber. I'm a Big Valley tribal member. I live on the Big Valley Rancheria on the shores of Clear Lake. My family is a Hopper clan. My relation with the hitch is symbiotic. For 18 years, I've been harvesting the hitch. Need to understand the hitch is very special. Clear Lake is the only place in the world the hitch are. When the hitch run, it's a big event due to the fact that they're seasonal, which means we catch for subsistence consumption. We dry the hitch, We're trying to make it last for us and our elders throughout the year. The hitch is not just a source of substance, it's a part of our culture. My aunt talks about how the families went out and harvest the hitch working together. She shared how to get salt and fillet and dry them so it can last throughout the year. I have fond memories of my brother and my sister and our kids working together to bring the hitch back to our mom and our aunts. Now getting older, my kids will have to take this on as long as their kids too. Carrying our traditions. This is why I come before you to ask for your support to make sure that Clear Lake Native's source of substance will continue. It's as simple as asking you guys to provide maybe more fishing game, monitoring unpermitted wells, grape vineyards with their hoses soaking in. They need cages so they don't suckling the hitch. Working with natives so that the permit process is not so complicated. We have passed our knowledge of the hitch from family to family. We are the original stewards of the land. Help us make sure our children have a future with the hitch, because it's not just a fish you're saving. We're saving a healthy way of native Clear Lake lives. Thank you for your time.
My name's
There's a plug.
green light. Here we go. My name is Ron Montez. I'm a tribal elder for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians and also the Tribal Historic Preservation Office. And in the days that I grew up in the 50s, I'm 72 years old now. In the days of my youth, it was our social event of the year when the hitch ran. In those days, thousands of hitch would come through the creeks and out into the farmland where water was sitting. And the native population would triple in size because it came from Mendocino County, Sonoma County, and Lake County, because it was the biggest food source for all those tribes. It did not just affect the local ones, but they were used to feed many other tribes. And so it became a hot spot for them to camp and to catch as many as they can, because it would have to last them throughout the years. And daily food was acorn mush, 2 fingers, and a piece of dried chai or hitch or other fish. That was eaten 2 times a day, every day. The importance of those fish was that it sustained generations. And the traditions of that was a community tradition to bind the groups and the families together as they all gathered together. And there was happiness, there was joking, there was rolling around in the water. There was joy that was passed down from these watch our older aunts and uncles rolling around and yelling at the young ones, grab one right over there, get down, get down. And so it was a time of real bonding as families as well. And then afterwards, all that fish had to be cleaned. And so they'd sit out on the rocks or a log, and they would then start to clean the fish. And we were there to take all that fish and put them on racks so that they could dry. So then we put them in these big burlap sacks, and it smelled pretty bad, but that's what we ate. And we would store them in a place above so that the animals couldn't get up at them. And it was our jerky for the day. From a young boy, you get up, you tear a piece off, and you go play, chewing on it. And that was our meals in the evening, where they would take those and cook them. And maybe some potatoes or something with it, and some bread of some sort, a tortilla, or lazy bread we call it, different ways to make bread that goes with it. And it was our normal food. We ate it more than 3 times a week. We ate it almost every day. When in my time, we ate at least 5 days a week when we had it. In our economy, Native people were not hired by the local businesses. We had to pick fruit or work out in the fields to live. And so food was a very valuable and expensive resource. And so it demanded of us to go and use those resources to the fullest. And that is what sustained me as a young man. Now, when I look in those creeks and there's no fish, I think of my children and my grandchildren will never know that experience that was specifically in Clear Lake for the Pomo people. Traditions handed down, families drawn together, and there was such a joy and happiness in that gathering. Right now, the generations below me can only hear our stories because there's not enough chai or hitch in these rivers, in these creeks, for them to experience what we experience. And now there's a 5-year before they're extinct. That's about 2.5 years ago. We don't act soon, we will not have any more hitch. I think all of the testing and all of the information that is needed has already been done. I just encourage you to move that message on from us, that we would like to see that speedily put into place. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lee Santana, fisheries biologist for Robinson Rancheria. I do work with Big Valley every now and then, especially in their basin. One of the biggest problems is all the creeks are going dry. In the Big Valley Basin, not even a mile up, they went dry early May. So any hitch that were able to spawn, their progeny probably didn't make it, especially because all those creeks are dry now. I've had to do 2 fish rescues. One was actually last week for 262 juveniles that were in a puddle that was mostly mud. And under CISA, CFW is able to do stuff about it. And when these creeks go dry and water disappears, that constitutes killing of these fish. It constitutes take. So all we're asking is for whenever available CFW to go in and actually do something about that water. A lot of the times it's being diverted for agriculture, and most of the agriculture in the county is wine. I don't drink wine. My kids don't drink wine, and I don't encourage others to drink wine. But the fishes, as you've heard, they've been food for time immemorial. That's the true agriculture, and the fish, they need that water.
Tomasha Anderson, a member of the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Yamaba. You know, we're here in protection of the land, animal, plants, and insects, the ecosystem, to protect every part of it. Every animal, plant, especially the hitch, have their own purpose separate of ours, and have their own songs, their own prayers. And they're only found here, just like my people are only found here in the whole wide world. You know, the hitch, the chai are only found here. And they're a food source for us still. And we are trying to survive as people just like the hitch are. We're trying to sustain our culture, sustain our language, sustain our way of lives, sustain our passage to our children. And the hitch are going through the same exact thing. So we are in line with them, trying to breathe. And, you know, we want Game Commission to be a strong voice for us in helping protecting our waters, our natural systems, for water use, and challenge and fight for us. Stand up for us, stand up for the environment. I mean, we're all here for a purpose. That's what you guys are here for. stand up and speak for us. Speak for the animals that can't speak. You know, I don't want to acknowledge our elders here for coming a long ways to just be here. That's how much we care about this fish. They're our heart, and that's why our people are here. And this is a human rights issue. This is part of our food. You know, Sarah had talked about the pollution. We talked about climate change, land use, agriculture. This has directly impacted our way of life, and it is a human rights issue. But you know, this is why we're here. So just please stand up for us. Thank you.
Folks online?
Yes, please, go ahead, folks online. Sorry, we have one more person in the room.
My question is to you guys, what is it that you plan on doing to help the tribe, excuse me, the hitch? I know that in our area, there's a big problem with illegal marijuana grows that are diverting the waterways. Who's responsible for patrolling the creeks and monitoring the illegal uses? Is that something that is the responsibility of Fish and Game? Is that something that I need to contact my local sheriff's department about? What are the next steps in preventing that from happening? Who's responsible for clearing the waterways from brush, debris, trash, and illegal trash dumpings? As far as my understanding, and please forgive me if I am incorrect, I believe that you guys have provided the funding, the power, and the titles to take care of these issues. And yet the tribes are doing your guys' jobs by doing the fish rescues and cleaning the creeks. And we don't receive the funding for that, but yet we still do it for you.
Mr. Chairman, are you still on Zoom? We'd like to invite you to speak if you can.
Melissa, a point of clarification, this item is coming up under public comment for items not on the agenda. And the protocol is normally that we hear the concern and we bring it up at a later meeting if it is agendized. I would like to speak about it right now, but I would like your direction on that.
So technically, at least for commission meetings, yes, if something is raised during general public comment, not on the agenda, it's something that the commission as a whole cannot act upon at the meeting, but can decide whether or not to add it to a future meeting agenda. I would suggest that our legal counsel will probably say something similar for this meeting, is that when an issue has been raised, if it's something that the Strata committee would like to have as a discussion piece, that it added it to a future meeting agenda.
Okay, I have a proposal. I'd like to add this discussion, to continue this discussion under item number 3, co-management. And I very definitely want to be a strong voice. This is why I'm on this commission. So with your patience, let's move this to item number 3 so I can speak freely.
Vice President Zavaleta, go ahead, and then we'll take some comments from everyone else.
Thank you, and thank you for all of the commenters. I agree very much with Commissioner Hassler-Carmison. I would like to take this up, and I guess my question, I'd like direction from you as well, Melissa, is whether we can ask someone to just provide, as part of the informational update from the agency, any information about current action, current management of the hitch, so that we could just have that context from the agency to understand what's happening and what their understanding is of ongoing threats and so on. That may be a lot to ask on the fly, but I want to ask it anyway if it's possible.
If you say updates from the agency on what context, are you referring to the Natural Resources Agency?
I'm sorry, yeah, from the department.
From the Department of Fish and
I
Wildlife?
apologize. I should have said the department. Yeah, from CDFW, if we have updates towards the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have the appropriate staff here to provide an update. If we do, obviously can ask them to do that.
Thanks.
So Ben Ewing out of Region 2, he does the monitoring and management, but it's strictly lake work. And he does e-fishing. I forget what his project is called, but it's an overall monitoring of the hitch population. And his report should come out soon if it didn't already, but it's e-fishing. And what he does is there's specific known areas where the hitch are found throughout the lake. So there's one spot on the north side of the lake, and then all the others are on the south side of the lake. And then USGS also does some monitoring, and they do gill netting, and they also do a lot of the water quality sampling. But that's basically it, besides fish rescues in creeks. But so creeks need a lot of management and monitoring.
Could you repeat the name of the CDFW staff member real quick?
Ben Ewing.
Ben Ewing. Okay.
Ben Ewing out of Region 2.
Thanks.
Yeah, so again, and obviously we have Jay Rowan here, who is chief of the fisheries branch of the department, but he doesn't oversee all of the regional activities. And I do think that there are some things that are being done at agency level, the California Natural Resources Agency. And so I think if we want context, full context for what various agencies are doing, and there are a group of agencies, all from US EPA to USGS, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, et cetera, all doing work in this arena, then I would suggest that that would be appropriate to request that the commission make this an agenda item for the tribal committee if it believes it's appropriate, and then invite a representative or those agencies to come and provide additional context and information themselves.
I think that's an excellent idea, Melissa, and exactly what I was going to propose. So I really, truly appreciate everyone being here to bring this to the tribal committee today. This is exactly why the tribal committee was formed, was to be able to really hear, to provide the forum for tribes to bring their issues forward and to really shine that light on the interagency coordination, collaboration, and communication. And I'm really tickled to hear that you're going to be in G2G, government to government with Director Vaughn, and that's another excellent step. So for now, I'd like to hold that conversation and bring it back up under co-management. I have some other thoughts. Ruthie, did you have something to share?
Yeah, I just had a comment, and I just really appreciate and thank the people that traveled all the way up here to make the comment on the water and their fish, because we know it's our culture and it's who we are as people. So I also just wanted to let them know that, the Department of Water Resources with our California Water Plan, that's also something that needs to be addressed. I do work with them, I have for years, on the California Water Plan and not recognizing tribal water rights. So I think this falls right into that. So I would just recommend that I'm working with Tito and Anacita, who's the tribal advisor for DWR. And we are starting to have kind of a working group for tribal members and tribal governments if they wish. And we're going to be having a meeting on September 21st, a visioning session. But that's one of the things I really want to include for DWR is their tribes and what you're talking about, Clear Lake. Being a representative for the North Coast and throughout the state, I'm really starting to see the issues abroad, and they're all the same. And I really like what you said too about, it's about the communication, the interagency working, because nobody really works with each other. And tribes are being asked and pulled in so many, 124 agencies, and tribes are asked to comment or add some input. So one of the things we're kind of looking at is the tribes coming together and not actually looking with the state in a request, but actually here's our position. So it's kind of a different way of looking at what do tribes want. So that's what we're kind of looking at for North Coast Native Protectors. But I just wanted to say that that's one of the areas, and we should be having tribal water summits coming up in April 2023. So this is a good conversation for that summit as well. And it would be good to have the Fish and Game Commission and all the agencies and the people so that we can all be on the same page and really get heard. So
It's gonna take that.
Yeah.
It's gonna take that interagency coordination, and it's a much larger discussion than public comment. So let's get to co-management discussion, and we'll throw out some more ideas, but you have my support. You have the support of the tribal committee. And I know when I take it to the full commission, you'll have their support as well. So thank you for your patience on moving on to the next agenda item. I can't see who's got it.
Yeah, go ahead, Freddie. Brianna's, we've had you doing that for a while, so if you can keep it short, we'll move on to the next item.
Oh, hi. Thank you. Yeah, I would like to say, I grew up in that era right at the tail end where there was still water in the creeks and the hitch by the hundreds, thousands, so many. And I remember sitting there at the creek and talking with my grandma, and I would ask her about the good times, how we're having it now, and ask, would this last forever? And she said, no, it wouldn't. There would become a time when the climate would change and you would fight for your food, like how we are doing now, fighting for our food. And a lot of it too, you can hear what the people are saying. We all see it, the ones from Lake County. It's the vineyards draining all the water. 10 years ago, there wasn't that many vineyards, but now there are. And now we talk about in 2 years only, there will be no more hitch. But I want to say that the spirits, there will always be hitch. They will come back, but just it will take a lot of time. But during that time now where they're dying, there's no more. I want to ask the vice president a question and the 126 agencies a question. Us tribal people, we know that the death of the fish is related to those vineyards and that wine. So my question is to all of those state agencies, are you ready now? Are you ready to handle the questions of, are these death related, alcohol related deaths now? Are these more alcohol related deaths? All the thousands of fish dying. It's shameful. Now we have to come to these ways. And that is the question that now these state agencies will have to answer. Are these alcohol related deaths? Thank you.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you, Freddie. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, the annual tribal planning meeting. And we're going to receive a summary from the July 20th, 2022 tribal planning meeting. And I believe, Chuck, you're going to provide some of the highlights.
Yes, and I will keep it very brief so we can hopefully jump back into our co-management discussion. It's just definitely getting in here. But I did want to, at the same time, invite any tribal folks in the room that did attend the meeting on July 20th to also provide any perspectives or thoughts that you might have had on the annual tribal planning meeting. And again, the annual meeting is required inspired by the commission's tribal consultation policy that calls for a means by which the tribes and the commission can effectively work together to realize sustainably managed natural resources of mutual interest, including communication, collaboration, record keeping, and training. So the annual tribal planning meeting is something that the commission does every year. It can range from just a couple of hours like we did this year to more of a full day meeting or a 4 or 5 hour meeting as been done in past years. This year we did have a much more abbreviated meeting in light of continued COVID, continued impacts to tribal programs, and the fact that through the subsistence work group, we're really asking a lot of tribes, a lot of hours, a lot of staff time this year. So we didn't want to add on another full day meeting for folks to attend. And in that way, it seemed like we did get a lot done in that 2 hour period. We did not add any new major initiative work for the commission. Continuing the tribal subsistence project seems to be still kind of a top priority for everybody in attendance. There were some regional issues that came up, some enforcement issues, some permit condition issues related to overharvesting, especially seaweed level, kelp and those kind of species in and around MPAs, the nearshore and tidal areas. That might require some both public and department training and even some tribal training for some of those permit conditions. They had a lot of questions about what are people actually permitted by the department to gather in coastal areas. So myself and the department, Chris and Sarah, committed to follow up on some of those items with individual tribes that brought those up. And another tribe brought out to make sure that our definition of co-management, several years ago, the commission adopted the vision statement and definition for co-management. There's been a lot of activity in recent years around that, both at the administration level and the governor's office and at the agency level, the California Natural Resources Agency. A lot of the development work at the commission predated a lot of that. So there was a recommendation to circle back as we have opportunities to update that definition and vision statement to make sure it's consistent with those kinds of activities happening at those other levels, which we did commit to do. And I think that was about it. Klamath River salmonids. A year ago, last June, the commission did list this spring chinook, Klamath River, under the California Endangered Species Act. And there was a request that we take another look at those regulations to make sure that they were being as protective as possible. I think that was all I had on my list. Did you have anything else you want to?
Yes. There was a lot of discussion about, as Chuck indicated, about support for tribal resource management programs. And, we've introduced the vision statement for co-management and the definition of co-management. Now we need to have our legislative body and the government put money into budgets for co-management for Native American tribes. And so I know at a federal level, I just spoke to Chairman Buster Atterbury, and he's on the Tribal Interior Budget Committee, and he said there is some recommendations for co-management in that tribal interior budget, which is very exciting. I don't have any more detail than that, but I know Secretary Wade Crowfoot, I know the governor, I know Director Bonham are all well aware that tribes are asking for funding to be able to bring their traditional knowledge, to be able to co-manage. And so I think that's a very important aspect when we talk about co-management. Tribes do not have the budgets, they do not have that additional funding to be able to pull from their general fund most tribes, especially small tribes. So we had representatives from several tribes asking for support and funding sources to maintain staffing and productivity and to be able to work one-on-one with the Department of Fish and Wildlife in California. And then there was also information that Chuck had put in for listening sessions on climate change assessments. There's going to be 2 listening sessions, one on August 17th at 10 a.m. and one on August 18th from 5:30 to 7:30. I think it's the governor's 5th climate change assessment, an effort to integrate tribal priorities and tribal ecological knowledge into the assessment for climate change. A research grant program and tribal advisory group are being developed, and nominations for the advisory committee are currently being sought. And that's Janita Thompson introduced those opportunities for tribal consultation as well. So thank you, Chuck, for your hard work on this. And we, like Chuck said, we've been having a lot of meetings. We've had 2 meetings on subsistence. We've had our tribal committee meeting. We have fish and game meetings every other month. And I just really encourage all tribes to get involved and look for that funding and look for those opportunities to be part of the tribal committee work.
Thank you, Jackie. Any folks in the room that were online that were at the annual meeting? Any express any thoughts or feedback? I think a lot of folks in this room were there. Erica, are you still on? Those questions on that?
I'm still here and listening with great interest. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry that I was not able to be at this year's annual meeting.
Oh, we have Erica and Bernie on today. That's good. Sorry. Okay. So again, next year, probably around July, we'll hold another annual meeting. It may be abbreviated as it was this year. And with that, I would like to move on to, Fred.
This is Fred again. Sorry, I just have one quick question. It was on the budgetary items with climate change, and there was an allocation for the tribes. I forget how many millions was that. I think 20. But is that money for that climate change money? Is that climate change money anyway related to the $100 million land buyback that was promised? At one time, the governor said 100 million for tribes to buy back land, but then in the budget, what really trickled down to the tribes was, I think, 20 million in climate change monies. So I'm not sure when those monies will be available. Will there be more, 80 more million, is my question. When will those monies be released? And yes, when will the money be released?
We can check on that, Freddie. You're right, there was a request from the Natural Resources Agency through the governor's office for approximately $100 million in tribal conservation funds that did include a significant amount for tribal management projects. I haven't seen yet how much of that budget request has been approved by the legislature yet. I know that there wasn't much in the first round, but I think there's some budget amendment items that will come through next month that I think we may want to keep an eye on those. Did you have something?
They're actually this month. The legislature has to be finished up by the end of this month. And so any of those additional budget changes that they will we're working on, including climate stuff, has to be completed this month.
Okay. So, yeah, tribes to your legislators, that's probably the best source of information and advocacy that we recommend. I think this is a good opportunity to remind folks about the differences between the Fish and Game Commission, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and other agencies. We are a 12-person agency. We have a grand total of a dozen people working for us. We're largely a policymaking agency. We have operability over about 200 different authorities under the California Fish and Game Code, the Natural Resources Code, California Government Code. But the Fish and Game Commission is not a granting agency. It's not a management agency. It's not a stewardship agency. But we create the policies and regulations that affect a lot of those activities. So it's important to remember when you're attending these meetings, we have certain boundaries that we work within. We work very closely with our colleagues at the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They're the big management, stewardship, enforcement agency of 5,000 some employees. So it's often useful to remind folks of that. Any other comments on this item? Should we dive back into our co-management roundtable discussion?
Before you do, just to let folks know, I'm putting at least one, maybe two links in the chat related to the governor's most recent proposals. Just news release from last week.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
So regarding co-management, it's come a long ways, and we began discussing co-management during the Marine Life Protection Act, the regional stakeholder group, and the Blue Ribbon Task Force. And there was a group of tribes in Northern California that really did form a strong coalition that really reiterated over and over that they had not ceded their rights to the ocean, and that co-management should come out of the effort on MLPA. And so it's very rewarding for me to see what's happened in the last 10 years. Even though we've just dipped our toe in the water, we have co-management vision statement, we have a co-management definition, and we have co-management partnership with the Commission and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And so with those things said, and I just mentioned, now we need the funding to supplement that co-management and to sustain that co-management. There's some great examples of co-management. Earl, I know Bear River is working on co-management with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Are you comfortable, and would you share just a little bit about your co-management effort?
Right now, we're in the early stages of getting our fishing rights going, and we are still having meetings to stay on board with that. So we are still working on that.
And I know several other tribes in California are also engaged in co-management. The Karuk tribe, Chuck, help me out, who are some of the other tribes? I think yeah, Chalawa, Dene Nation, Bishop Paiute. So there's, maybe a handful of tribes that have begun that process. But it's not it's tribe by tribe. It's not exactly the same for each tribe because it depends on the tribe's highest priorities. And those co-management agreements become they're executed between the department and the tribe. So each one is different. But what I wanted to bring up for Big Valley is has anyone mentioned that there's an opportunity for co-management? And it's an emergency. What I heard today, it is an emergency. And that emergency is to save the fish because the water disappearing together with toxins in the lake. I don't know what's creating the toxins, and maybe you can share a little bit more about that. But what I can see, the opportunity here is exactly what the department does in other situations. They rescue fish. And I can see an opportunity for co-management. And I'm not going to speak for Director Bonham, and I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. But I think that co-management effort can really be successful if everyone is working to save those fish that are stranded in those creeks. And then to also work on water flows and also to work on the pollution in the lake and all of the things that are attributing and the cumulative effects that the fish are experiencing. So maybe just a little bit more information on what you've done so far with the department would be helpful.
Thank you. I know that certainly there have been fish rescues, and I hope that Louise talks about that. Robinson has a permit with CDFW to do fish rescues. Big Valley has been very engaged in what other agencies are doing with regard to the hitch. So DWR with the groundwater sustainability planning with this area that where Big Valley is located is a medium priority groundwater basin, and so it needed a groundwater sustainability plan. The tribe has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees to work with hydrologists to identify some of the issues with regard to the creeks drying up. We have equipment in the creeks. We've got we're doing monitoring. We don't have minimum flows established. I know all that happens under State Water Resources Control Board, not CDFW. So we are looking at multiple areas of data collection and management. When it comes to, however, the understanding of really, the 1,600 LSA agreements, and as others have stated today, the legal diversions that are going on, the overall cumulative impact of thousands of acres of vineyards going in. There's a whole lot more that can be done. The tribe is, Big Valley and others have put so much into monitoring and action. So so in terms of rescues, it's definitely happening. Really, one of the things that I believe will be discussed in next week's meeting is just, if this is perhaps the last run is next year, it's like, is there anything that can be put into place in the midst of this historic drought to make sure that the run that happens in the spring is more substantial? Because really, when tens of thousands of fry are dying in the creeks because there's not enough water, that means that there should be some sort of curtailments. The curtailments I know happen at the water board's level, but there's still, if the federal government is saying the state has got this, then the state's gotta have it. And the tribes are very active in trying to manage this as well.
I'd like to make a comment also. Ron Montez, tribal elder, typical of the Big Valley Idaho Indians in Midpoint, California. We have always been up against the red tape that has slowed down and frustrated tribes to get help, and the hoops that we have to jump over or through because the different agencies that have jurisdiction over certain parts of these different needs that we are looking at, they don't talk to one another. And so we're stuck in the middle because these fish won't be here that long. And so our hands are pretty much tied, but we're still waiting for them to designate them at the federal level as endangered species so they can get something moving on. We had to go to court to get it from the state. And they had all the documents, they had all the information, they knew it, but they would not put that in there. So from that point till now, there's so many kids should die. and how many will die before they actually move on it, then you may be acting too late, and they may be gone by the time somebody agrees to put into action what we're asking for you to do. So we're at a desperate time in our struggle to keep the hitch alive. And it is more than just a food source. In our traditional knowledge and understanding, is that Creator put us there, and we have management over all of those resources as our number one priority, because that is our food source. So when we take something, we leave something in acknowledgement of that relationship we have. So these are all deep and spiritual ties in with what we're talking about. It's not from an archaeologist's perspective and knowledge or education. It goes much deeper than that, because there's a relationship that we have with all those resources. And we're so grateful that Creator allowed us to find which berries to eat, which ones not to eat, which medicines work for what ailment we have. And we just continue to learn because we believe He gave us all those resources. And the food resource, which Hitch has filled for like since its time immemorial, is very, very important to us. Even, because there's so much use of water systems, which we will discuss with that group, that affect the reproduction and the growth of the fish. And they're looking to make more money, and so they're bringing in bass tournaments and lots of things to raise money and making it more of a recreational type of idea, but at the expense of no movement, nothing going forward towards preserving those traditional foods that we have. So again, I really want to encourage you to be our voice, speak loud, speak from that place that we have in here, not from up here. And that hopefully that we can get some help in time. Thank you.
So I'll talk about some of the co-management stuff that's been going on, and I can also touch on pollutants. So recently, some of the co-management is, anytime Ben needs assistance, I think he's the only one that's actually funding ECFW to go out, and then he gets volunteers from different offices in Sacramento, whether it's Fisheries Ranch or Region 2 or the downtown office. I think most of them actually volunteer their time to come out and help them. But besides that, he contacts the tribes in the area and then other locals who have a vested interest in saving all these fish. So I know he does city fishing, and then he does the rescues in the creeks with backpack electroshockers. He does, I think, visual surveys on some of the creeks, but he can only spread his time so much. He mostly focuses on one basin, which is Big Valley. And there's a strong run on Kelsey Creek and Adobe Creek. There would have been a strong run on Manning Creek, but it's basically been dry all year. So, I mean, the big problem is all the water, and I know there's only so much CDFW can do. Monitoring, I don't know what comes with the monitoring of groundwater or any of the pump houses. I think, because these fish are protected under CISA, I think, going around all the intake pipes, whatever it is, and, providing some information, because I know a lot of the vineyards, they just don't know. They don't know that there's these historical traditional fish that they're taking water away from them. They don't know that the Clear Lake split tail is extinct. They don't know that all the creeks used to provide so many of these fishes to eat. You know, one of them is the Sacramento sucker, and thankfully it's still very abundant in Clear Lake, and they do have strong runs. Another one is the Sacramento pike minnow. I know a lot of people don't like them because from out of the basin, they're just detrimental to native fisheries. The other one, the Clear Lake hitch, but that one's soon on its way out. But for co-management, you know, Ben is doing the best that he could do with the money he has to do his job. I don't blame CFW for that. I mean, I don't know how decisions are made to provide more funding, but historically, Lake County and everything has not gotten any funding for anything, not just CFW. I mean, we're the poorest county in the state, and that hasn't changed for decades. I think the management of water is what's most important, because, you know, without that water, the fish can't survive. When I was swimming there all the time, my kids aren't swimming in that lake. I'm not gonna let them because it's so bad. I mean, you can just go down there, visit it, and ski it, and know what I'm talking about. So the water quality, I mean, the pollutants that are going in, it's a combination of things. It's agriculture, and I know water rights is very touchy, and there's like fine lines, but you know, all the nutrients they're adding with fertilizers. Clear Lake is naturally very abundant in volcanic minerals, so there's the natural process. Our mercury problem comes from the mercury mines. So our mercury problem is not from, you know, going after gold. It's from mines specifically for mercury. And one of the tribes is actually on the UN colony. They're on a Superfund site because of the mercury problem. And it's historically known that a lot of their members develop cancer. And, you know, their community is still there. I don't understand why. I mean, I do understand that they want to stay there because that's their traditional lands, but at the same time, it's a Superfund site. But we shouldn't be telling them like, hey, you need to leave your traditional land. Like, that shouldn't happen in the first place. So the pollutants is just a number of things. There's also the big bass tournaments every weekend. Like, they stir up all the sediments. One of the things that we're working on is goldfish and carp management. And goldfish and carp, I think they produce worse turbidity with everything in that lake. If you come during their spawn, it's crazy how dark the water gets, just because they stir up all the sediments. And at the same time, they also get rid of aquatic vegetation, where a lot of the native fish, you know, they rear and get nice and fat and are able to provide the next generation. But I think it's something like 80 to 90% of our wetlands are gone because of a number of things. Development for, you know, whatever human uses. So the pollutants, we could probably talk about all day. Co-management, there's a little bit there, but there needs to be a lot more.
Thanks. And just adding to that, the massive runoff from wildfires that have been plaguing 99% of the perimeter of Clear Lake in the last 10 years. And just lastly, Sarah, you told me, and it's been mentioned here a couple of times, that what numbers we're looking at right now in terms of what the current population of fish is from the juvenile and the spawner's perspective. Can you remind me of some of those numbers real quick?
So as Louise was mentioned, USGS has been out in the lake doing fish surveys. Unfortunately, during COVID, we really didn't hear from them, but they, in the end of 2021, we saw their data that said that there was no juvenile recruitment going on for several years in a row. And the USGS scientists said it's like the human population not having any children for 50 years. So yeah, the numbers now, you know, between the e-fishing of Ben Ewing from CDFW showing Some, he did show several thousand fish over, Marcus was the catch per unit effort. I mean, it was basically showing several thousand fish in the creeks as they're coming up to spawn, extrapolating. But the numbers in the lake with the USGS surveys, and they hit a lot of spots, was maybe in the hundreds, so it didn't look very good. But not having that, several years where you don't have any young, really any numbers of that, followed by no adults either, and you have several years like that in a row. And we didn't know about that until 2021. And that's when the federal government decided not to list them after numbers like that. So it was really surprising that they have settled with Center for Biological Diversity to look at 2 more years of data. So the federal government is saying, yes, if they will allow 2 more years of data to kind of rethink this. And they are potentially, so it'll come under review in 2024, 2025. But again, if you listen to the biologists, they're saying limited to be around, I think.
So in other words, hair on fire status for the clean catch.
Ben's last report, I think it was like 40,000 for CPUE. And then Fred Fair, USGS, he was the one that was doing the lake stuff, and I actually helped him out. The first year they did it, they got like 250 fish. It's just gone down ever since then. And then this last June, we got 6 hitch in 2 weeks. And we're setting nets throughout the lake. So we're sampling the entire lake. Water conditions were actually really good for it. And the fish that we did catch were in really good shape. We got 6 of them. And that's Clear Lake. It's gigantic. And we only got 6.
Well, thank you, everybody, for bringing this to our attention. I did want to commend Sarah for just really being smart about how the tribes approach all this and the advice that I know she's giving folks, and when I reached out to the director of the Department of Fish and Wildlife and secured a meeting with him, which is, in these kinds of circumstances, is probably the best approach to getting some quick action. So we will continue to monitor and permit these kinds of presentations and conversations at the tribal committee level. But we're going about things in that way to try to get some quick action. So thanks.
And the follow-up of having a meeting with the full commission, I think the next meeting is in December down in San Diego, right? But hopefully, what we need to see happen is some changes and some action before the next hitch fund. So we look forward to following up with you with the government consultation, but also with the next December meeting to actually to be on the agenda and bring together the reports and the information from these different agencies so we can see what else we can do for the next hitch fund.
I was going to recommend, if possible, your leadership could make public comment tomorrow morning here to the full commission and bring the emergency to them. I believe Director Bonham will either be here or online. He will be here in person. And under that public comment, you can reiterate, each, I think public comment is usually 3 minutes per person. Let them know that you did meet with us today, the tribal committee, and that, in bringing it to the full commission, you're bringing it there because you feel that you are in an emergency. And I kudos to Ben Ewing, I want to meet this gentleman for, persevering and looking for money and doing everything that he can do. That's awesome. But we need the full attention of Director Bonham and possibly Natural Resources Agency and those other agencies, Department of Water Resources. But by at least bringing it to the full commission, tomorrow we could vote to put it on the agenda, and I don't know that it would have to wait for December. Possibly we could have it on our October agenda on the Fish and Game Commission calendar. if we chose to add it to that agenda in October, could we do that, Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I misunderstood. I thought we were adding this to the tribal committee agenda.
I think it's at an emergency level, and I think it needs to be added to the full commission agenda now.
Okay.
Is what I would recommend.
I think it would also be really helpful if you're asking the commission to add it to its meeting agenda, that it be clear what we are asking the commission to do.
Right.
Since the commission has such limited authority in this area.
Right. I think it would be the coordination of information to, determine what can be done, and that government to government consultation will inform that, I'm sure. And I have the utmost faith in Director Bonham. He handles emergencies very well. And I think it's super important to make the case that this is an emergency. And I would just highly recommend making the same public comment tomorrow morning to the full commission.
I know many of us are planning on heading back, but I know that it is an open meeting and we can,
yes,
join the Zoom.
And Chuck just reminded me, we can bring it under our tribal committee report that we're recommending it be on the commission's agenda for emergency discussion. Commissioner or Vice President Loleta, are you comfortable with that recommendation?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Hausler-Carmison. I'm fully in support of that recommendation. I agree. This is an emergency, and I just want to reinforce everything that you said and convey that you all have my support. And I'd encourage folks, if they have questions, to reach out to me as well if they would like to talk about it before the October meeting.
Thank you, Vice President Loleta. Director J, Deputy Director?
No, Chief of Fisheries.
Chief of Fisheries, okay, I do it.
So first, thank you guys for coming and bringing this to the committee. I've heard recently the reports that we come from Clear Lake from Vince, and I certainly share your concerns with the population numbers. I work on the status review, so I understand where you're coming from, and I definitely share your concerns. Oh, sure, sorry. So I know we have an upcoming consultation. The department has gotten a significant amount of funding specifically for emergency drop situations, right, for saving fish in these situations. So if you guys have some very specific directed ideas of things that would help, that would be important to bring to that meeting. So, we have some things that we've been talking about internally, but definitely if there's things that you have on your checklist, bring them to that meeting and let us know. I'm not exactly sure. Sarah, I think Dr. Bonham said the consultation.
Yeah, we have August 22nd is when we'll be meeting.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. And I do understand that Director Bond will need to do that to the G and get more information. So really this elevates it to the commission level tomorrow, and the commission will wait for that meeting, but then the discussion can continue on the support.
Yeah. We can also bring it during our conference results from the meeting back to the commission too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jane. Thank you all so very much for being. I'm going to go ahead and move us along. Yes. Thank you for being here and sharing that today, and I look forward to the co-management agreement that comes out of this effort. So let's go ahead and move along. We are at item number 4, Chuck, definition of tribal subsistence and harvest, and there was a meeting this morning.
Holes. There was a meeting this morning.
Sure.
Just want to thank everybody who is still here that attended that meeting. And for those of you that were at this morning's meeting, I would definitely like to invite you to come up and sit around the table and be feel welcome to share your perspectives about that meeting this morning. We've been doing a lot of talking here, so I want to definitely make time for your impressions of what happened this morning. For those of you that weren't there or that aren't familiar with the project, this is a special project of the Fish and Game Commission designed to identify a definition for tribal subsistence activities or tribal subsistence harvest activities as distinct from commercial or recreational. This has been a topic that tribes have been bringing before the department, the commission, anybody that will listen for the last several decades. Is the challenge for tribal citizens to be able to engage in subsistence activities in their own Aboriginal territories without that activity being criminalized by the state of California. And so this morning represented our second meeting, incorporating some perspectives from the first meeting where we were really focusing on definition language. We really, in discussions with tribes both at the first meeting and after the first meeting, and some kind of ad hocs on the side, we proposed a potential shift in approach where we focus on defining those activities, and rather than the word subsistence itself. And this is still a bit of a moving target, and we're going to potentially work on a white paper in coordination with a number of professionals and tribes that volunteered some of their input on this. But essentially what we're talking about is how to align the regulatory state within the state of California in terms of how it regulates fish and wildlife and access to those better with tribal priorities and rights along with subsistence activities. And so in representing somewhat of a shift in approach, we're pulling examples from other parts of the country, Alaska, Oregon, some activities taking place at the federal level, where there's much more of a focus on defining gear types, activity types, management regimes, rather than secular government trying to take ownership over words like subsistence. So there were several examples that we put forward at this morning's meeting where a framework was developed around subsistence activities, making reference to subsistence activities, in some cases maybe the tribes taking ownership of that framework. And it was really the activities that were regulated by the state, which is more aligned with how things are done now. And so kind of the take-home message, I think, from this morning's meeting is really start getting some of those ideas down on paper. Several tribes offered to contribute to that. And then before the December meeting in Southern California, the San Diego area, then we'll have something on paper that we can start circulating around the different tribes for the purposes of evaluating that approach. Is there anybody here around the table or in the room that would like to offer additional comments? Clear right culture. But yeah, feel free to make your perspectives known or online about the subsistence project and the direction that we're headed with that now. Anyone else want to say? Anyone online?
So I was participated in this morning's meeting on subsistence harvest definitions and discussion. And one of the things that I brought up was that that sort of discussion has somewhat already happened at the Cali PA level. The Sea Resources Control Board in 2017 adopted 2 definitions for tribal cultural uses and tribal subsistence consumption. It has to do with water quality standards. That's very much just like a water nexus, but it was a very broad-based definition so that regionally, locally, tribes can use that to further define the standards needed to protect their uses. I know that at Big Valley and many other tribes as well, they're looking at exposure scenarios. You know, so tribal uses look different from recreation, look different from kind of commercial use, as has already been discussed. And that means different exposures to contaminants that need to be factored in when you're talking about management of resources. So that was the other thing I brought up is that if we talk about subsistence harvesting, I really think that it needs to contain information about protecting those species. It should be a thriving of them. There should be healthy sustainability. So it's not just access, you know, to these fish and wildlife, but also that they are thriving and it's sustainable. And so that even though some of those things about healthy might come under other agencies like maybe Cali PA's Department of Pesticide Regulation, pesticides, and Water Resources Control Board for like oil spills and things like that, there's still that potential for collaboration and really this great deepening of the management of resources so that Native peoples can access and consume at subsistence levels in a healthy way. So just, you know, we focus that on a lot at Big Valley because of the cyanotoxins on the lake. So that was just some components I brought up. And then I know that some of the other comments were also about tribal codes and tribal management that they're doing on lands and how to, you know, move that into ancestral lands. I know that we don't have any codes like that at Big Valley yet, and it might happen. I mean, it depends on tribal council, what the priorities are for that. But at the very least, if there's some standards for not only contamination, but the thriving and sustainability of being able to consume at subsistence levels. That seems to me like those should be components of any discussion on any kind of management of policies on subsistence harvest.
Thanks. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That was one of the other aspects that we tried to bring out this morning was, in addition to things that we do here at the state level, tribes have every opportunity to legislate themselves. I brought out a few examples of tribal policies, tribal ordinances that really start to actually in how they word some of their code sections actually start building bridges by reference specifically to state and federal agencies. So I see that as kind of building these co-management bridges because there are so many areas where there are questionable jurisdictions for tribes in the state or overlapping jurisdictions or jurisdictions are unclear or whether there's potential for real good collaborative enforcement and collaborative management. And so in addition to what we're doing here in the Policy Development and Fish and Game Commission, I'm really hoping that we can use this as a platform to help reveal some of the other opportunities that tribes might be able to take advantage of that might not be, a huge staff or teams of consultants to marshal together. Because there's a lot of stuff out there on tribal websites, tribal codes and ordinances that they just put out there, especially along the Pacific Northwest coast, where a lot of the resources are very similar, that bear some investigation. So at the same time that we're looking at what the state can do here in California, it's really helping the tribes are exploring, exercising their own sovereignty to the greatest extent.
It goes back to the earliest discussions. It goes back to unratified treaties. It goes back to a lot. And the recognition of tribal sovereignty and self-determination is extremely important in my mind. The subsistence is, and someone said it earlier, is not just taking, but it's also giving back. Because when you take, you leave the healthy plants or you don't take everything. And it grows, the resource grows. And I know you all know that, but for people who don't know that, that's how my family harvests. My family, my children are Hoopa, and my grandmother's 93 years old. So I've seen a lot. Tribal law, tribal jurisdiction, I think is super important in having that capacity, building that capacity within your tribe to have your codes, to have your enforcement. I think that's super important. But I hear all the time, tribal chairs say this, tribal members say this, tribal representatives say this. They want to be acknowledged, and they want to have it be understood that this has been, the resource has been their way of life since time immemorial. And tribal IDs in lieu of fishing licenses is what I hear all the time. It seems like it may be way out or way above our ability, but I don't think so. I think if we work hard together and have these discussions, and we can identify what the commission can and can't do, then it goes to legislation. And I'm not lobbying for anything right now. I'm just saying we all know that it's probably going to take legislation to be able to get this done. And it's going to take tribes having built their capacity for enforcement and to have those tribal laws. I'm struggling with this issue right now because it is not a formal committee. If it's a formal committee, then I can be present. But if it becomes a public meeting with me present. So we're going to be talking about that. I feel like I need to be in these meetings. I feel like I need to channel these meetings together with staff, because I have a lot of experience in tribal law, a lot of experience in tribal family, a lot of experience in knowing how to get things done. So I'm very passionate about it. And we'll be having those discussions. I don't know how it will work out. At the very least, I can listen to recordings afterwards, but that's not like being present at the meeting and having that synergy going on. So I'll be looking at this and working with my staff and legal counsel to figure out how I can be part of those meetings. Perhaps they should be public, and perhaps tribes break out in a caucus. We'll see how it goes. But I don't want to endanger the substance of the private meeting either. So, I'm going to be asking for input on that. But I just wanted you all to know I wasn't in that meeting this morning because I have to abide by the Bagler King laws, which is very difficult for me. I work for a tribe, and I fight for tribes. So just wanted to put my 2 cents. Thank
you. Can I make a comment? So, when I think of tribal subsistence, it's an action word. So for us, it's the process. And it's the holistic view of the whole process of survival and balance within ourselves, our communities, our environment, our worldview, and being in rhythm of Mother Earth. When we are harvesting, there's a lot of planning that happens. With not acknowledging the time of season where the least impact would happen, when you collect, where to collect, your community, working with your elders and your leadership, and getting their knowledge of the best ways to collect, to harvest, to do things. And then those teachings are within a group setting. So you have your children there, you have your young adults and elders. Everybody's listening, everybody's learning, everybody's having input. So it's not a separate thing. It's about the process. It's about the whole thing. It isn't separate. And so by that way, there's a lot of different interactions happening at the same time. So a lot of different teachings happening at the same time, where the actual harvest, it isn't really about the harvest. It's about the process. It's about everything that leads up to that. And that's the most important part of it. And then that's where through all that hard work and planning and processing and finding and hunting and the whole thing, what that teaches everybody that has been a part of that process is respect. That's what everybody takes out of that, because of the work of everything that it takes just to get that, to get those medicines, to get those foods, to do that type of work is what you get back is respect and learning and growth as an individual. And especially for young ones, they need that growth, especially the way the world is. They need that connection, and it reconnects those relationships we had from a long time ago. And those are things that we're talking about. So again, it's a process. I just wanted to state that, because some of this language is broken up, and really our worldview is everything is connected. And so just wanted to make sure that that was stated. Thanks.
Good, Rich, thank you. Okay.
Hello, I just wanted to introduce myself since I stepped in a minute late. I apologize. Tiana Williams from the Europe Tribes Wildlife Department. And I did attend at least partially this morning before claiming internet died and I couldn't finish it. But I do want to reiterate a lot of what I'm hearing today, that I know one of the things that I had expressed was that I felt that I had concerns over the term subsistence itself. I know we want to have a fulsome sort of definition, but some of these standards that have already been established for subsistence seem to be very focused on kind of the act of, the food that gets to your mouth, exactly. When, as was stated, it's more about the process, it's more about the relationship. All of this to say, I feel like I'm very invested in this, both as a tribal member and as a wildlife department lead. So I didn't have the opportunity to say that I would love to be on kind of this smaller working group we're talking about to come up with some of these definitions and ways that we might move forward. Particularly as we're talking about subsistence as kind of a tribal thing because we have this very specific relationship. But of course, management of wildlife or fisheries community members goes well beyond tribal boundaries. So co-management is going to be incredibly important in recognizing our traditional obligations to the full of ancestral territories and how do we actually implement change through the full of ancestral territories as opposed to our relatively limited reservations, the lands that we own. So I think that this co-management conversation is going to be very telling when it comes to subsistence and what it really means in implementation. But mostly I just wanted to say I'd love to be in further conversations on sort of the way that we move forward with this. I'd love to volunteer my time for that.
I had fully volunteered to England Library. Very much appreciate your words, and yeah, I just have to echo that. Yeah, it's really challenging, from a native worldview to try and just articulate all of these concepts into the various compartments and stovepipes that the state and most secular governments tend to separate things. And so it's almost incumbent on us to try and weave around and weave through those things to try and construct a coherent policy framework that will work for both the tribe that's enforceable and specific, but will start to get closer to approximate tribal worldview and tribes' needs, rights, obligations to manage their world, not just their fish over here and their insects over here and elk over here. So I hear you. Thanks for continuing to participate and bring those ideas forward.
Can I add on a little bit? So I've been lucky enough to work in some awesome agencies, and I've been lucky enough to work with some awesome agencies, CFW, U.S. Forest Service, WR, but for Robinson, I work with the Iraq tribe, and I was lucky enough to be able to work with Uber tribal members, Kaluka tribal members, Mechuta, a lot of different ones. And they invited me to a lot of subsistence harvests, whether it's fish or wildlife. If I may, I mean, I think the best thing to do is actually participate and just actually see what the whole process is, because we can tell you how it is, but until you actually live it and are able to see what subsistence truly means to them. I mean, a lot of the times it's all they have. A lot of your tribal members and Hoopa tribal members were very willing to share lamprey with me, or salmon, sturgeon, deer, elk, whatever it may be. And when you go visit them at their homes and realize, like, hey, a lot of the times they live just for that, and they're able to share that with you. It means so much more to you, and you understand it at such a different level. So, I mean, I doubt you guys have time to be able to visit every tribe, but if you do have a chance or opportunity to be able to actually live the subsistence harvest or the whole process of it, whatever it may be, it means so much more than what's going to be on paper, and you'll just have that experience to be able to suggest something else.
I'd like to reiterate one more thing. Even though we're just still getting our feet wet for our tribal fishing license, we haven't even set net, had done anything yet. But I was a Euro tribal member for many, many years. I fished up to Klamath for many years, with kids, my daughter. So I know it's all about up there. And did you say you're from Europe? Good, because I'm still Europe, even though I'm not on the road and I don't fish up there anymore. But it's very important to know that the fish up there are not doing well. The fires are creating are contaminating the water, and it shows. And it's very important that just to be aware of that. Not only that, we had a very mild winter. And when you have a mild winter, there's not very much water. If you don't have much snow on the mountaintops, there's not going to be much runoff. And it's not going to be good. And I've seen that in April. And we're going to be feeling definitely the effects of that. But it's one of those, make clear that the Euro people need their assistance as well. And not just Euro, but also the Hoopa. I have a lot of family up there, Jackie, and you might, I also live in Kimligo, so I know a lot of people everywhere.
I recognized you.
Yeah, so I didn't go 50 far. But again, I just want to let everybody know that Bear River Tribe is just starting out. That's why I didn't have much data to offer for co-management. Figuring that that's not that far yet. Okay.
We started out with setting the bar pretty high for a lot of folks, so we appreciate it. Thank you so much. Should we move on? Actually, Vice President Zavaleta, did you have any closing remarks on this item?
Thank you, Chuck. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to appreciate very much all of the comments and suggestions that we've heard to that last comment. I think not just Commissioner Hostler-Carmison and myself, but other members of the commission, it would be great to extend to them as well opportunities to observe or participate in some of the activities that you're describing, because I couldn't agree more. I think that's the window into understanding how complex this is and how much more it is than just use. So I would encourage, if it's appropriate, people who are participating in these conversations to extend those invitations when it's possible. And I really appreciate, again, I really appreciate all of Commissioner Hostler-Carmison's work on this and all of our advisor, Chuck Striplin's work on all of this as well. I wish too that I could be part of the larger conversations that are taking place, but I understand that we can't because of Bagley-Keene, we'll do our best to learn from the excellent reporting that we get back about them to the extent that we can. So thank you all.
Thank you, Vice President Zavaleta. I was just sitting here thinking how we could get all 5 commissioners out to do some subsistence, and it would have to be a public meeting. So, you know,
maybe that's a field trip.
A field trip. And I have had the honor and I have had the experience, and I do have a lot of the knowledge because I was married to my first husband for almost 35 years. And so I grew up that way, and it's very, very personal for me. So let's go ahead and move on. Staff and agency updates. I want to thank our staff and our agencies for hanging in there. And are we going to go ahead and go to OPC first? Jen Eckerly.
Hello, thank you so much, Commissioner Hostler-Carmison, and hello, Vice President Zavaleta. Thank you for the opportunity to give a few updates from the Ocean Protection Council. My name is Jen Eckerly, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Ocean Protection Council, and I'm filling in for Mike Askro, who's OPC's tribal liaison and is on vacation this week. So a few exciting updates from us. The first is that the Ocean Protection Council is working to develop a tribal engagement strategy in collaboration with tribes. This strategy is going to provide a framework for enhanced partnership between OPC and tribes on ocean and coastal related issues. Last year, we engaged more than 10 coastal tribes through early consultation and listening sessions. The Ocean Protection Council staff developed a draft strategy based on that tribal input received during those discussions. The draft strategy was released to tribes for further consultation in early July. We are going to hold additional roundtable listening sessions to solicit feedback on the strategy. On August 24th, we will have 2 of the same session. One will be held from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, and the second will be held from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. The 90-day consultation period on our strategy will close on October 7th. During the fall, OPC staff will work closely with the Natural Resource Agency's Assistant Secretary for Tribal Affairs and the Governor's Office of Tribal Affairs to finalize the strategy. And we are hoping to tentatively bring this to our council for their consideration and possible adoption at their December meeting this year. We have a few other consultation efforts underway right now. One is focused on the state agency's sea level rise action plan for California. We're offering consultation on this document now. This serves as a collaborative roadmap for planning and implementation for coastal resilience. It was created by 17 state agencies, and it contains over 80 agency-specific actions on sea level rise, but it is a living document, and it will absolutely be significantly strengthened by additional feedback from tribes. We're also going to be likely initiating consultation towards the end of this year on a state aquaculture action plan, and that plan is to serve a comprehensive, consistent, and state science-based framework for marine aquaculture in California. And we're working really closely with staff from the Fish and Game Commission, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and others, members of the state's aquaculture leadership team. And I will be sure to provide updates on the status of that effort and opportunities for consultation when they're available. Some additional positive news. We launched a pilot program, the Tribal Marine Stewards Network, in June 2020 with 4 partner tribes, the Rezagini Rancheria, Talawadini Nation, the Kashaya Band of Pomo Indians, and the Ama Mutsun Tribal Band. This pilot project is geared towards improving tribal capacity to monitor and manage marine protected areas within their ancestral territories. Partner tribes right now are wrapping up research, monitoring, and outreach projects anticipated for completion by next year. And this pilot program was launched with a $1 million investment from Ocean Protection Council, and we had philanthropic partners recently committed additional funding to support tribes over the next year. So thank you to the Resources Legacy Fund and the Packard Foundation for seeing the value and importance of investing in this program. At our October 6th council meeting, we will recommend approval of additional funding to scale up this network. We're looking to broaden the scope beyond marine protected areas to include more coastal and ocean management as a whole, and to include more tribes. The partner tribes are also planning to host a launch event in the evening of that day. And finally, OPC is currently scoping the development of a dedicated tribal small grants program. And this program is envisioned to be fairly flexible and open-ended. We're hoping to support tribal priorities for coastal and ocean conservation and management through efforts that align with OPC's strategic goals. So we hope to bring a recommendation to fund that initial program either by the end of this year, and with a request for proposals likely released in 2023. So thank you so much for the opportunity to provide these updates, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from folks in the room or online? Go ahead, Fred.
Hi, this is Fred. I would like to say, as a Pomo, we are very concerned over the seaweed because we harvest that for our food. And one of the things that relates to our food and the environment is the microplastics. So when we harvest our seaweed, we're picking out every little piece of sand, every little shell, any little bug, anything in the seaweed, we pick it out. So these microplastics now coming are a great concern. And I had this dream, I want to say, in the basket, where they wanted to help tribes protect their food in a way where it's a potential pilot project for a policy-driven action, which is to do the same thing like they do on land, where if you find a piece of litter, you have a penalty. Kind of like, so what I'm trying to say is like have these tribes create this policy that protects their coastline from microplastics, but at the same time use what they used on us, capitalism, where you make those laws, and when those microplastics come on shore, you could fine and penalize those companies. I know the state of California is very concerned with that plastic industry, and as tribal communities, we always come up with clever ways to protect our food and protect our seaweed, especially from the microplastics. So I really hope, in the future, we could create more policy around something to protect our seaweed. Thank you.
May I respond briefly?
Please.
Thank you so much for that comment. And I'm going to put in the chat, this is a really important and critical issue for us as well. And the Ocean Protection Council actually just adopted a statewide microplastic strategy to address this issue. And Fred, I'd be interested in touching base offline to, explore and discuss some of the ideas that you have about how to engage tribes in addressing this problem. So thank you so much for that comment.
Any other comments from in the room or online?
Jen, quick question on the small grants program. What is your target that you're thinking about right now for that grant program, dollar-wise?
We're hoping to launch the initial pilot with a $1 million investment, $1 million investment.
What would be the ceiling though for individual grants? Do you have that?
Yes, I do know that. So our ceiling right now, we're looking at a minimum of $50,000 and a maximum of $100,000.
Nice.
But we are thinking through, we're still working on all the details, and we did have a question about, I should stop and say the idea is to have all California Native American tribes, including federally and non-federally recognized tribes, be eligible as applicants. We are also considering having tribally led non-governmental organizations be eligible with a preference to tribal governments. So we're thinking about, if we have proposals that come forward with a consortium of tribes, how we might navigate that, and if there's flexibility in the maximum amount. So we're still thinking through those caps, but that's where we are right now.
That's great, Jen. One of the hugest issues is finding funding for capacity building, especially for small tribes that don't have the staff that have the funding to work on those specific items. So hopefully that would be an allowable expense in your grant.
Yeah, that's something we heard often in the listening sessions we had around the tribal engagement strategy, and we're doing our best to prioritize that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Before we move on to our colleagues at the department, I wanted to apologize for being very crudely host and not affording folks at least a 10-minute break to go do their biologicals in the time. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to take about a 10-minute break real quick, and we'll come back just about 4 o'clock. Thanks.
Cool.
Okay, everyone, let's get going again. Welcome back to the Fish and Game Commission Tribal Committee. And I'd like to ask Wildlife and Fisheries Division Branch Chief Jay Rowan to give his update.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for letting me bump up a little bit. I appreciate it. In the interest of time, I want to keep this short. We're talking today about the Southern California steelhead status review. So a few weeks ago, the department sent out a little over 300 requests for tribal input on the Southern California steelhead endangered species act status review. So currently we're looking for information and input tribes may have on Southern California steelhead that they would like consider during development of the status review. So if tribes have information or are interested in consultation, we are asking that you reply to the CDFW Southern California steelhead email, which is scsh@wildlife.ca.gov, or the CDFW tribal liaison email. That's tribal.liaison@wildlife.ca.gov. No later than September 30th, so that we have an opportunity to analyze the information during the status review development process. And I'll put both of those email addresses in the chat. We'd also appreciate a follow-up response to the mailer, even if you don't have comments and you're not interested in providing input, so that we can do our due diligence and follow up with those that have responded. So again, I'll follow up with those email addresses into the chat and any information you have, we'd like to hear during development. So thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions from anyone in the room or online for Jay before we go? Not seeing any. Okay, we're going to go back up to the top to Chris Stutes with law enforcement division. Thanks, Jay.
Hi, Chris Stutes, Law Enforcement Division Assistant Chief. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, tribal representatives and attendees. I've got a couple of good news updates. I'll keep it brief. Starting in July, I'll go back to last month, and you may have seen when you came in, there was a billboard up the way that highlighted that the department partnered with the Bear River Band here and conducted a hunter education course for tribal members. The class was originally slated to be a pretty large class. As it turned out, all the numbers didn't show, but it was still a success. Department staff as, well, let me back that up on that part. So hunter education is required in order to hunt or have a hunting license in California. The department's wildlife officers are hunter education instructors and conduct hunter education for anybody interested in getting a hunting license and getting hunter education. So Bear River Band reached out to the local wardens in the area who came up with a partnership idea to host here at Bear River a hunter education course focused on tribal attendees. And so that occurred. The whole course was a success. Department staff reported that the tribe was very welcoming and appreciative, and everything went well. Earlier this month, around August 5th, the department graduated another class of wildlife officers from its Wildlife Academy, adding 18 new cadets sworn in and badged, soon to be released into the field, but not until they complete another few months of field training. In addition to the 18 new cadets, we also added 3 lateral hires, which are peace officers that work for other agencies that have now transferred to our department to be wildlife officers. And then the last update I have is about one of the greater things. So at the beginning of this meeting, Melissa had said this is only the second in-person meeting that we've had with the tribal committee in well over 2 years. Other things that we put on hold during that time that used to be a primary component of my updates when I would do updates related to enforcement and tribal were public outreach and events involving either engagements with tribes or recruitment type efforts. But one of those is the annual California Native American Days at the Capitol that we've, I think, partnership with the commission, the department, and enforcement has been attending that and manning a booth for, let's say, at least 6-7 years. And with the exception of the times that it's been closed down recently because of COVID. So we're excited that next month on Friday, September 23rd, we will resume participation in that event, and please come out and check out the booth that we'll be manning. And that's all of my updates. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chris. Let's go ahead and move on to Scott Gardner, Wildlife Branch.
Hi, yes, Scott Gardner, Wildlife Branch Chief, Chair Hassler Carmison, tribal representatives. We have several items that you see on the agenda that staff points of contact are going to give directly. And, you know, if we're running long and you want to shorten them, let us know. Most of them are fairly brief verbal updates. And then I think we've got about a 5-minute presentation that we want to give you update on elk treponeme-associated hoof disease. So with that, I don't know, Chuck, do you want to announce the individual speakers or me or?
Why don't you go ahead and work through your folks as they're ready.
Okay, you bet. So on the first one, we have our tribal cultural specialist that you all know so well, Sarah Fonseca, there in the room, and she is going to give you an update on our Access for All initiative.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, good afternoon, almost evening. Like Scott said, I'm Sarah Fonseca, Tribal Cultural Resource Specialist. I wanted to just give a quick update. It's been a year since I was introduced to you guys at the Tribal Committee. I had loved the position in that year, and what I plan to continue to do is support our furthering developing tribal affairs program. I can say we now have a tribal liaison in all of our regions and even some of our programs. And so just to continue supporting them and department staff statewide who engage with tribes. I've been participating in some of the CNRA working groups and as a co-lead, and I also signed up to be part of the planning committee for some type of event during November for Native American Heritage Month. And working on efforts to get a statewide cultural resource contract in place and to help develop our templates and guidance for tribal consultations. So pretty busy, would love to continue working with the tribal stuff. Leading into that, our Access for All initiative, or Access for Underserved Communities, we are starting to begin planning projects with the Climate Science Alliance in Southern California. And some of those projects include propagation of native plants and restoration training for tribal community members, educational trunks and backpacks on climate change and fire stewardship modules. Well, we're also in discussions for potential cultural tribal burns on DFW properties in collaboration with tribes, department staff, and possible Chico State collaboration. And we're also going to be sending out tribal notifications soon statewide regarding our efforts to re-examine our property names. So some of those things that fall under the Access for All. And that is it. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll continue to check in with the committee on the Access for All / underserved communities as we move through that over the coming months and years. So next we have an update on potential Western Joshua Tree CISA listing, and that will be given by Isabel Bear, who is an EPM in our native plant program.
Hi, thank you, Scott. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. My name is Isabel Bear. I'm the department's native plant program manager, and I oversee the evaluation of plants-related listing petitions received pursuant to the California Endangered Species Act. The commission received the petition to list Western Joshua Tree in March of 2019. The commission determined that the petition action may be warranted, and the species became a candidate for listing in September of 2020. The department's status review was publicly presented and deliberated at the commission's June 2022 meeting. At this same meeting, the commission heard from tribal citizens that more directed outreach to tribe was needed in this matter. And the commission closed the administrative record and continued its decision until its October 2022 meeting. Given Western Joshua Tree's cultural significance to multiple Native American tribes, the possible implications of this listing decision, and the comments received during the June meeting, the commission reopened the administrative record specifically to seek greater input from Native American tribes. There are several ways to engage in and provide input to the commission's listing process prior to the October meeting. Earlier this month, the department and commission sent an invitation to all tribes to join a tribal listening session on August 23rd. If you would like to participate and haven't replied, there is still time, and the commission's tribal advisor, Chuck Stripling, can provide the meeting information to you. You can also submit written comments to the Commission's email address, or you can request government-to-government consultation with Department and Commission staff. Of course, you can always participate directly at the October Fish and Game Commission meeting. Thank you for your time, and I can take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. Next up, we have 2 items, and versus repeat it, I'll just let Mr. Joe Gruteau introduce himself and talk about his items. Joe.
Hey guys, thanks Scott, and thanks to the commissioners and the committee. Thank you, Chuck, for getting me on the agenda to give a couple updates. My first one is on Milo Baker's lupin, and let's see. At the June Fish and Game Commission meeting, Milo Baker's lupin was upgraded in listing status from threatened to endangered. At that commission meeting, there was also a considerable discussion about the need to reestablish strong communication with the Round Valley tribe, because that's the only area where this plant grows, and pursue co-management and co-conservation for the species. Relatively quickly, we were able to connect with Patricia Rabano, who is the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Round Valley tribe. Patricia, Chuck, Sarah, and I met on July 18th. After introductions, we gave an overview of the regulatory listing that happened in June. Chuck then provided a summary of the function of the commission and its commitment to environmental justice, equity, and inclusion. Jennifer Garrison, who is our region subject matter expert, then provided an overview of the commission efforts since about 2017, 2018, and some ideas for education, scholarships, propagation, and agreements moving forward. Patricia provided some helpful perspective about land ownership, tribal projects, challenges, recently COVID, and how best to move forward. Some tasks we discussed included Jennifer providing Patricia the status review, plus any maps, shape files, and BIOS layers that we can summarize quickly for Patricia. We also talked about possibly pursuing a more culturally meaningful name and maybe doing a genetics analysis. So Jennifer's going to look into that. Jennifer's going to resurrect some old propagation agreements for future use. Patricia committed to making connections with the high school to start an outreach education program for the species. And she also committed to start collaborating with the tribal newsletter to distribute information more locally. Jennifer and Patricia discussed meetings soon to coordinate field schedules and include Chuck Striplin and Rafika La Rosa. If we don't know if we're going to let Chuck out of the office yet, but Chuck wants to get out there if possible. Since July 18th, Jennifer Garrison has been working with Caltrans to get a series of updated maps for Patricia. She has created a CNDB PDF maps to share with a wider extent of the plant, and working with Caltrans to represent the most up-to-date extent information. So there's a lot of positive energy associated with this resource, and we think the path is clear for open and transparent communication between the CDFW, the Fish and Game Commission, and the Round Valley Tribe. And I will stop right there for a second, see if anybody has any questions before I talk about sport fish.
Excuse me, I forgot, Joe, who was the tribal rep? Was it Jennifer?
So Jennifer Garrison is a biologist that works for CDFW. The tribal representative was Patricia Rabano.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Pretty exciting project.
Go ahead and keep going, Joe. We're gonna offer.
Okay.
Questions.
So my other update is for the upper Klamath sport fish regulations. Klamath dam removal is on pace for drawdown in 2023 and volitional fish passage by January 2024. On July 5th, the fisheries branch sent out an internal memo soliciting regulation concepts. They're due August 31st. Doesn't give us a lot of time, but concepts don't generally require a lot of pages. On August 1st, we sent out draft concepts to the Hoopa, Yurok, Karuk, Quartz Valley, Shasta Indian Nation, and the Klamath tribes in Oregon. We requested a favorable response to the concept by August 15th so that we can polish the concept and send it in. From here forward, there'll be broad and frequent discussions with the tribes, the fish agencies, and state of Oregon as the concept, if the concept is green lighted, we really hope it is. And we have not yet fleshed out all the options in what a Title 14 regulation will look like. We will start working on that as soon as the concept is green lighted. And so the concept will the Title 14 will probably have a variety of things about whether or not fish can be pursued, if they can be harvested, and the spatial element about how far we go downstream. So stay tuned on that. We just met with the regulations committee yesterday about this, and they're ready for us. And that's it for that one, from me anyways, unless you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Joe. So next up, we have Dr. Brett Furness, who's going to give us an update on our black bear conservation and management plan development.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the commission, the tribal committee, tribal representatives, and members present here today for the opportunity to provide you an update on the department's recent activities with regard to black bear. And so first, I'll provide you a bit of background, but really the main reason I'm here is to give you a summary of activities with respect to outreach to the tribes and why and how we would like that information to help us create a better bear management plan. So the background is in this past April, there was a petition in front of the Fish and Game Commission pertaining to bear hunting. And I won't go into all the details, but part of the response from the commission was to task the department to come up with a revised bear conservation and management plan. The last time it was updated was about 1998. So they would like us to have a draft revision of that by next April. And so a central element of that will be an improved approach for counting the bears, so for monitoring those populations. We presented a little bit about how we thought we'd do that. We have some ideas using something called an integrated population model, but we want to flesh that out, put it in a plan, and show how that plan is related to actual management and conservation. So in that path that we've got started on, we've convened a technical advisory group of experts within the department to help us with that central part of the population modeling, but all the other things that touch on hunting, touch on conservation stressors like climate change, human dimensions of wildlife, etc. And we are also engaging with the University of California to do some independent peer review of this monitoring approach as well, and let us know if it needs to be rehauled or refined. And so we're moving forward that a central part of this development of the plan is outreach to the tribes. And so, I mean, as you know, it's a requirement for us to provide notice. And so we sent out a letter to the 300 tribes in California, the contact list we have. So that's federally recognized and otherwise. We sent that out on June 24th. And so giving a notice of the update of the plan as kind of part of this, what you've heard, government to government relationship and a formal consultation. And so inviting that, but also we sincerely want that input from the tribes to incorporate those ideas to help us fashion a strong plan that addresses a wide range of issues. So that letter went out on June 24th, and to date we have received 4 responses. That includes 2 informal consultations, and we've already followed up with those tribes with teleconferences in the last month or so, and that was the first step of those consultations that we expect that they will follow up with some written comments and language, ideas for language that we can include in the plan, helping to frame it and otherwise. We also had one request for formal consultation. And so we responded to that, and we're trying to set up a meeting date for that to happen, so that we haven't had our first meeting yet. And then we had from one tribe just keep us posted. So acknowledging that they have authority and their historic lands overlap where the bear are. And so we will keep them posted as we move forward. So for example, a next step will be developing an outline for what the revised plan will look like. So we'll be sending and sharing that with the contacts we've had so far. Obviously, it would be nice if we heard from more tribes. So this is a requirement, but we sincerely, I think the plan will be better if we can incorporate these ideas. We'll certainly have a section in the plan that spells out the tribal authority in these issues. But are there ways that we can take ideas from the tribes and integrate them through other parts of the plan that are relevant to conservation and management? Blending that with the science, we'd certainly like to hear. One thing that we will probably do is the tribes that we've heard from are really all so far, those 4 are from Southern and Central California. We haven't heard from tribes from the north yet, where most of the bears are. So we will be following up directly, contacting tribes in Northern California, such as the Hoopa, the Yurok, the Karak, and others, because we really would like to have your input. One suggestion from one of the tribes bands that we met with is that there is an internal meetings within the tribes called, I don't know if I know what the acronym means, but it's the TPO meetings. And so that person was going to put out the message at that next meeting that we're interested in receiving input and collaborating on what bear policy is for in the state. And so that message will be going out there as well. And we certainly understand that that there might be a lot of notices going out to tribes, and it might be, you're kind of getting bombarded with all types of these notices. And so are there ways that we can make that easier? I mean, if you wanted to combine your comments on different species, for example, there'll be a notice going out in a little while regarding update of another management plan regarding bobcat. You could combine those if that was easier. But we certainly would like to hear from you. We will also be making regular updates to this committee and also the Wildlife Resources Committee as well. That's all I have at this point. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm certainly happy to answer.
Brett, this is Jackie. If you would send me the information that you would like to get out, the tribe I work for supports the Northern California Tribal Chairs Association. There's 3 regional associations, Northern, Central, and Southern. And it would be a really good way to distribute the message for Northern. So if you can send an email attaching the letter that was sent out before and any additional information, I'd be happy to get that out.
Thank you. I will definitely do that.
Thank you for your report and all the work you're doing on this effort.
Great, thank you, Brett. So our final item today, as I mentioned earlier, is about a 5-minute presentation. We wanted to check back in with you, particularly in the region of the state that you're in, on our ongoing efforts with treponeme-associated hoof disease and elk, and in particular, the tribal aspects of our managing that disease. So today we have, the presentation is going to be shared by Dr. Emma Lance, who is online, and with you in person is Carrington Hilson, who is our local elk biologist. So I'm not sure who's going first, but take it away. We're going to check, are you going to tee up the presentation? Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Scott. And thanks, Chuck. Yeah, thank you to the tribal committee. We're really excited to be able to share some of these updates that we have for you. I am Dr. Emma Lance. I'm one of the veterinarians with the Wildlife Health Lab out of CDFW. We also have Tom Batteron, who's the statewide elk and pronghorn coordinator. And then, as Scott mentioned, Carrington Hilson, who's the North Coast elk biologist. So treponeme-associated hoof disease, just a quick primer and review. It's also called elk hoof disease. The Treponema species, it's a spirochete bacteria, so spiral shaped and silver staining like you can see here, that's associated with clinical disease in elk. With more understanding of this disease since its identification in the late 2000s, it's clear that TAD is a polybacterial disease, so there's treponemes associated with it, but also a whole host of other bacteria that play a role. It's a multifactorial disease, so there may be genetic or immune system components that predispose individuals. The prevalence may be dependent on the density of the animals, and treponemes are likely widespread in the environment, but it's something that's very, very difficult to quantify. Much is unknown. It was only first suspected in elk in Washington in the 1990s, and we also don't know much about the transmission or population level effects. The diagnosis, unfortunately, is only available post-mortem, so we need hooves in order to look at evidence of the disease. And before we have deaths of animals, so mortalities that we're able to diagnose TAD in, we do look for lameness, but there are other disease processes and injuries that can cause lameness. It's also complicated because there's no single test for TAD. We usually go by three different measures based on histopathology. It was first confirmed in hooves in Roosevelt elk in Del Norte County in California in 2020. So again, just a little view of the range of this disease in the upper left. You see that sometimes it's as simple as ulceration of the skin in between the claws. But it can also be seen as long hooves, those scissored hooves in the upper middle, progressing to end stage disease where you have a club foot, the claws destroyed, there's reorganization of bone, and really a loss of a normal looking hoof. I'm not sure how well this one is going to work, Chuck, if you can play that video or if not.
I didn't realize that was a video. I don't think that's going to work.
No worries. It's okay. The main point in this video is I wanted to show that the cow on it. Oh, there we go. The cow on it is very obviously limping, right? These are prey animals, so they try to hide their clinical signs at all costs. The fact that we can see this and identify it, this isn't an intermittent limp that they're going to recover from. This is end stage disease. And you can go to the next slide. Yeah.
So we started surveillance with that first detection. So the first samples were actually collected in December of 2019, and we got confirmation late in 2020. So that year we set out to collect as many samples as we could and continued to present. So over the past 3 years, we have collected 384 samples from elk within North Coast EMU, which includes Del Norte and Humboldt counties. Of those, the majority have come from hunter harvest samples. So we have a check station set up and we work with all of our hunters, PLMs, and share hunt coordinators to collect samples. And the first year, I believe we had about 95% compliance from our hunters, which is great. We also collect opportunistic samples, which includes roadkill individuals or elk that have died from other causes. And then we are going out and we're performing TAD targeted surveillance. And Emma will kind of touch on that 2 slides from now, but to date, we have collected 78 samples utilizing TAD targeted surveillance, basically legal protocol. Next slide. So the first cases, we're in that 2019, 2020 year. We actually started with 3 cases. We ended up collecting samples for another positive individual. The following year, we had, and that was all from one herd, index herd up in Delmar County. The following year, we had 58 positive cases, but it included 7 total herds. So it included that index herd and 6 additional herds extending down into Humboldt. This past sampling season, we are still waiting on lab results from 86 samples. But we have 43 presumptive positive cases, which is based upon visual observation of the hooves. And we're assuming that based upon, visual inspection, we probably have 2 additional herds to add to that list. Next slide.
So as I mentioned in the video, that is a representation of a cow with very severe end-stage disease. If you remember from the photos, that little ulceration in between the 2 hooves, an animal like that isn't going to be severely lame. And there are instances where sometimes the animals in early stage disease can recover. However, CDFW, we have been using targeted surveillance, including the removal of obviously severely lame individuals, that end stage disease, as you see here in the photos, for a number of reasons. For welfare of these animals, for surveillance or diagnostic purposes, and it can potentially have an impact on management of the disease. But it's important to note that in wildlife diseases in general, higher densities often result in more disease. Removing infected individuals may reduce transmission, but once the disease is present, it's rare that eradication is possible. It's usually living with the disease. And so as part of this targeted surveillance, we have been transferring carcasses for tribal use.
So as I said earlier, we've removed 78 individuals over 2 years. Of that 78, 76 have been transferred to local tribes for tribal use. And as you can see, we've worked with several tribes locally. So Talwadega Nation, Elk Valley Rancheria, Yurok, Blue Lake Rancheria, and Weopt.
And going forward, surveillance is going to continue for this disease across the state, although it's going to focus on negative herds and detecting incursion. And that'll be done by hunter harvest. We do ask hunters to turn in hooves if they notice anything abnormal around the hooves or the skin. Opportunistic mortalities and targeted surveillance that continues. Up in the North Coast, Carrington, and additional staff will continue to run a check station and be on call for hunter harvested elk. And we are interested and do appreciate the assistance that tribes have made in that area and reporting for us as well. As far as collaboration goes, there will be notifications, tribal notifications that go out shortly regarding a TAD scientific working group. That is a group of universities, NGOs, state agencies, and tribes that are trying to work on the scientific aspects of this. And then as far as public outreach goes, I know that there has been a request from Yurok to potentially put together a flyer notification of what to look for. I don't know, Chuck, if you can go back to the previous slide. Yeah, I'm working off of, okay. And then Carrington.
So we're also going to be proceeding with the North Coast Elk Working Group to basically get our local partners together to discuss elk management within the North Coast Elk Management Unit. So our management plan, what is specific for this area, is contingent on the input from our partners. So we're proceeding with that. And then we are hopeful to kind of formalize a plan with our local tribes in regards to carcass transfer as we proceed with disease management.
Next slide. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact any or all of us or ask any questions at the moment.
Great, thank you, Emma and Carrington and Tom, and back there in the background in silence. That's our update. Thank you for listening to it. And does anybody have any questions for us?
I don't know if I can just jump in here. This is Amanda O'Connell, Councilwoman, Tallahassee Nation. I just had a question for the North Coast Working Group and then the TAD Scientific Working Group. How do we get involved with those? I mean, my staff probably in Kalawa has already been in communication maybe with you guys, but I just want to make sure, cover our bases and figuring out how to get involved in those working groups.
Maybe Carrington, you want to take that?
So Tallahassee Nation has been very involved in TAD management from the beginning. They have been notified through a formal letter regarding the working group and will be communicating with them. The North Coast Elk Working Group, we started that prior to COVID. That was kind of what put a damper on moving forward. We actually had meetings, I believe, for the week that things shut down. So they will be involved as well, and all local tribes will be invited.
And as far as the TAD Scientific Working Group, that is not only countrywide, but I think we have some Canadians interested as well. That's with universities, NGOs, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and agencies. That an official letter will go out to tribes requesting participation for those with TAD in the area, and an alert for tribes that don't have TAD in the area, as if it moves into those areas, we will ask them to participate as well. The focuses of that are primarily directing research.
Thank you so much, Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're going to move on to actually stick with the department and ask Becky Oda to provide an update on California algae harvest management and the tribal participation in the marine protected areas. Take it on management review.
Thank you, Chris. I wasn't expecting to be next, but thank you. I don't have to be last. So this is Becky Oda with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Region, and I am the Habitat Conservation Manager overseeing the department's management of the Marine Protected Areas Network. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Commissioner Hostler-Comerson, for the ability and the opportunity to provide hopefully a quick update for you guys. I know it's been a long afternoon, so this will be fairly quick. So we are getting into the home stretch when it comes to finalizing the Decadal Management Review, or the DMR, as we and this timeline slide provides a snapshot as to where we've been and where we're headed with the DMR. The Decadal Management Review report has been in development throughout 2022 and prior to that, starting well from 2020 and 2021. But as a reminder, again, the report includes input from tribes, state and federal agencies, stakeholders, and science advisory teams, and will provide outcomes of research and monitoring, identify gaps in knowledge, and recommend future MPA management strategies moving forward. Regarding tribal participation in the Decadal Management Review, I want to concentrate and put a little bit more detail on the first two sections of the timeline that you see on your screen. So CDFW sent letters in 2021 and in 2022 informing tribes of the first Decadal Management Review of California statewide marine protected areas network and management program, and to gauge the interest of tribes in that process. Other letters and emails were sent throughout 2021 and much of 2022 to announce or provide opportunities for informational webinars and discussion, and that happened last fall and earlier this year. And then CDFW staff also engaged with a few tribes in informal consultations, and in information sharing as they requested over the last year. With assistance from Strategic Earth Consultants and supported by funding from the Ocean Protection Council, a tribal steering committee was established in 2021 to help guide the state's efforts to outreach and engage with tribes during the decadal management review process. And the Tribal Steering Committee was an informal that helped identify communication channels, strategies, target audiences, and known barriers to tribal engagement. Ms. Teresa Romero, as a member of the Tribal Steering Committee, was gracious enough to accept the appointment as the Decadal Management Review Native Nations Coordinator, and she was aided by 3 regional tribal consultants, one from the north part of the state, one from the central part of the state, and one from the south part of the state. And these consultants helped to conduct targeted outreach via phone, email, one-on-one meetings, whatever was needed, to tribal leadership directly involved in coastal and ocean and MPA issues and initiatives in their region. They also helped work with tribal leaders and Strategic Earth staff to inform the assembly of publicly available tribal input that had been shared with state agencies on coastal and ocean management in recent years. And then they also helped to review and finalize a summary report of assembled tribal perspectives to help inform the decadal management review. Teresa, working in partnership with the agencies, DFW and Ocean Protection Council, the Tribal Steering, a virtual roundtable meeting with tribes and tribal leaders in May of this year. Teresa, the steering committee members, and the regional consultants, through all of this engagement, helped draft a living document summarizing and synthesizing tribal perspectives to inform the state of California Marine Protected Areas 2022 Decadal Management Review. And the information from this document is being incorporated into the main body of the DMR report. The full report, as a reminder, will be delivered to the commission in February, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But the full report that the tribal consultants and the steering committee put together will also be an appendix to the DMR, in addition to what's been incorporated into the body of the DMR. In early September, the draft DMR will be available for tribal review and comments on the tribal specific cultural information, and if interested, in the report in its entirety. With a deadline for comments on it October 4th. So there will be a month-long period where tribes and tribal communities will be able to review the tribal content and the report itself and provide feedback to us so that we can get it done in time to get it to the commission. In closing, though, on this timeline, I want to draw the attention to a couple more important milestones. The final DMR will be publicly available in January of 2023 and submitted to the Fish and Game Commission in February of 2023. In addition to that, a public symposium on the DMR is planned for March 15th in Monterey. And it's in Monterey because it's in association with the Marine Resources Committee meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for March 16th. Hopefully it stays that way. But if not, we're still having the symposium on March 15th. And then the rest of the timeline from the April and the tribal committee meeting in April and the Fish and Game committee meeting in April and May and beyond is continued conversation, discussion, decision-making on how we're going to be moving forward, how the commission decides they want us to move forward on any of the recommendations made in the DMR and by our stakeholders. So as usual, the department we're committed to engaging with tribes with the goal of understanding tribal interests and working collaboratively to resolve concerns. And we welcome the opportunity to discuss the decadal management review with you directly, including learning more of how we can better effectively share updates and engage with the tribes. And I will drop a website that provides a lot more information on the Decadal Management Review, where we put updates about the report, and you can find more information there. I will also drop my email in the chat in case you'd like to contact me directly. And that is all I have for you.
They're all dead.
Are they all?
Oh, except this one.
Did I put everybody asleep?
Oh, no. Microphone problems, Becky.
I'm so sorry. Could you guys hear me? Could you guys hear me?
Yeah, we heard.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's just at our end.
It's just being able to respond.
Okay.
Just tell us.
There we go.
Becky, I want to thank you for your work, for your tremendous outreach to the tribes, for all of your regional staff, one of which Ruthie is here today. And I think it's a great example of going above and beyond to get that tribal input. So just wanted to commend you on that and appreciate all of the effort.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate all the help we've gotten from our tribal members, and just the willingness to come to the table and let us know what they're thinking. So really, really appreciate that, and looking forward to continuing that. Thank you.
When it's ready, will you email me that report?
Yes, absolutely.
And microphone just died.
Can I ask just for any tribes or that might be
really
online?
loudly so they can hear you.
Excuse me.
The microphone will speak really loudly.
I was just going to say that for any tribes that are interested in reviewing the Decadal Review, we're also looking for artwork.
Yes.
You might be interested in for adding to the document, and it is a living document, so you know that it will be continued. Great. Becky, could you hear that?
I did, and thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I do want to say just one quick thing about the living document. The tribal document is a living document. There is going to come a time, though, in the next few weeks where we've got to finalize the DMR. That does not mean the document is not going to remain a living document. We just may not be able to get everything on it because of the timeline for publishing and getting that document put out there. But thank you. I think, is that Ruthie back there? I can't see who that was. Yeah. Yeah. So just want to make sure that's clear that we want it to remain a living document, and we're going to have to, Susan, you'll like this. You'll have to be pencils down eventually to be able to get the document done. So thanks for bringing that up, Ruthie.
How's the sound now in the room?
The sound is great.
Okay, so just the closer we sit to the microphone, the better. Okay, let me get my agenda back up. Actually, since we do have Ruthie Maloney in the room, did you? What's that?
Can't hear you.
Okay. Ruthie, did you want to say anything further on this?
No,
Okay.
just that, we're still working on outreach. So if the tribes still have time to, we haven't really submitted it yet, but we're getting ready to put out the document for draft review. So we would appreciate any tribes comments and suggestions, tribal members, people, because I'm always looking for boots on the ground, people who are really gathered.
Okay, still time.
To the chairs. Yeah.
Okay, let's move to Kirsten or Rebecca on kelp and marine algae harvest management.
Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Flores Miller. I am an environmental scientist with the Department of Fish and Wildlife Marine Regions Nearshore and Bay Management Project, and I will be providing the department's update on kelp and marine algae harvest management. So I will be starting off with an update on the regulatory amendments to commercial harvest of kelp and other aquatic plants. The Fish and Game Commission adopted regulatory amendments for the commercial harvest of kelp and other aquatic plants at their February 16, 2022 meeting. The regulatory package was filed with the Office of Administrative Law on April 19, 2022. Commission and Department of Fish and Wildlife staff were requested by the Office of Administrative Law to further clarify several aspects of the regulatory amendments to provide greater detail on the bull kelp harvest for human consumption allotment calculation and describe which harvesters would be allotted harvest amounts in Humboldt and Del Norte counties if the fishery is temporarily closed and reopened. Incorporate maps of administrative kelp beds and fishing blocks by reference, and remove regulatory options not chosen by the Commission during their February 2022 meeting. The clarified regulatory package was posted on the Commission's webpage on July 14, 2022, and emails were sent to the Commission's listserv and commercial kelp and other marine algae harvesters on July 15, 2022. As part of a 15-day renotice process. The last day for comments on the clarified proposed regulatory language was August 1st of this month, and 4 comment letters were received. The regulatory documents were refiled with the Office of Administrative Law on August 4th, 2022. So regarding consideration of commercial marine algae harvest regulations, specifically sea palm, the department staff reached out to several commercial sea palm harvesters to observe harvest methods and learn more from the industry. Department staff had the opportunity to visit 2 sea palm harvesters at Mendocino County harvest sites, observe commercial sea palm harvesting, and learn more from the industry. And the department will continue to reach out to harvesters to learn more about sea palm commercial fishery and further consideration of the regulatory needs. So now I will provide the department's update on the kelp restoration and research. So first I'll provide an overview of the Mendocino Kelp Restoration Report. In June 2022, the Ocean Protection Council released a full report produced by Reef Check and partners documenting results from a pilot kelp restoration project conducted in Mendocino County. The project was developed and implemented through a collaboration between state government, nonprofit organizations, including Reef Check, the Nature Conservancy, Noyo Center for Marine Science, and Watermen's Alliance, and commercial urchin divers. A few highlights of the project results include nearly 50,000 pounds of purple urchins were removed from Noyo Bay and Albion Cove to facilitate kelp recovery. Commercial divers were able to successfully reduce urchin densities below 2 individuals per square meter, which is the threshold density expected to support kelp recovery at both the sites. A limited but significant increase in kelp was observed at Noyo Bay. Next, I will provide an update on urchin density control by recreational divers. In 2020, the Commission approved an amendment to recreational urchin regulations, temporarily allowing unlimited take of purple and red urchins at Tanker Reef in Monterey County, and unlimited take of purple urchins at Casper Cove in Mendocino County, including via in-water culling. This regulation change sunsets in April 2024. Recreational divers continue to reduce urchin densities across the Tanker Reef Monterey County site. Monitoring surveys conducted by the department and Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary staff in spring of this year document that urchin densities remain less than 2 urchins per square meter within the monitored restoration area, while urchin densities at the control site remain high, approximately 7.5 urchins per square meter. Juvenile kelp densities increased to 1 individual per square meter within the monitored restoration area, and no kelp was documented at the control site in spring of this year. In Casper Cove, Mendocino County, due to COVID-19 pandemic, recreational effort has been lower at the site than anticipated. However, recent recreational diver efforts have increased within the designated areas at Casper Cove. Monitoring to track the ecosystem response of recreational diver culling is being coordinated by the department and the Nature Conservancy. Subtitled data is being collected by Reef Check, Cal Poly Humboldt, and the department. Kelp canopy monitoring is being conducted by the Nature Conservancy. And finally, I will provide an update on the kelp restoration and management plan. The department and the Ocean Protection Council are in the early stages of developing a statewide ecosystem-based adaptive kelp restoration and management plan for giant kelp and bull kelp. The department and Ocean Protection Council will fund partners to support administration, facilitation, stakeholder engagement, and science needs for the kelp restoration and management plan. Tribal engagement for the kelp restoration and management plan will include early consultation and listening sessions, as well as opportunities to consult on draft products, and regular updates on the department process will be provided at the Commission's Tribal Committee meetings. This concludes the department's update on kelp and marine algae harvest management. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Wanted to open it up now for any questions or comments from our Chair, Councilor Carmson, or Vice President Zavaleta. She's still on. I think she had a lead.
Just thank you.
Yeah, very, very thankful to the department staff. That was a bunch of stuff. So, anything from item 5B from the department? Are there any comments or questions from anyone online or in the room? Not seeing any hands up. Okay, so let's move along very quickly to commission staff. 5C1, potential agenda items for the October 22 commission meeting that you should find in the binder. Did you want to say anything on that?
I'm trying to bring out my.
Here we have the potential agenda items for the October 22 commission meeting. We have commission's rulemaking timetable. We have the work plan for the Marine Resources Committee, work plan for the Wildlife Resources Committee, and then we'll close it out the day with any proposed changes to the Tribal Committee work plan, of which I think there's just one, adding the Clear Lake Hitch. Updates.
I don't know that we want to add it to our work plan. I was discussing it with Melissa on break. I feel like it needs to be elevated to the full commission because it is an emergency. And I think, you know, the question is, what are we going to ask the commission to do? I think at the very least, we can write letters to other outside agencies. I think there should be a task force to address the issues. And I think Director Bonham needs to assert his authority in some way to make this a priority, to do everything possible to save the remaining fish that are left. So I don't know that we want to add it to the Tribal Committee work plan. I think it needs to be elevated to the full commission. And Commissioner Zavaleta is off now. She's not on, but she did agree with that recommendation earlier. So, with the approval of with the approval of the commission to take that on tomorrow, I think we should relay that in our report out from Tribal Committee.
We will do that. Anything further, Melissa? Or should we?
I'll come back in a minute.
Okay. Can we talk about it first?
Well, I think given the time, I just want to touch on, for the benefit of all of you in the room, that just like the tribal committee, there are two other committees of the commission, the Marine Resources Committee and the Wildlife Resources Committee. There's a lot of overlap between discussions, and we try to provide opportunities in this forum for tribes to be able to provide unique perspectives, although we also encourage and welcome participation in those meetings if there are topics that you want to track. So what's showing on the slide right now is for the Marine Resources Committee, and that has two commissioners who are co-chairing. You can see it's a long list of topics. You just heard updates on some of the planning documents and fishery management plans that are being developed, including the kelp recovery and management plan development that Rebecca Flores-Miller just highlighted, and then doing the decade management review of the Marine Protected Area Network that is being done consistent with master plan for marine protected areas and long-term monitoring plans. So that's the kind of the nature that we have discussions about where that's going, and the Marine Resources Committee can often provides recommendations when these are ready for the next stage of commission consideration, and provides recommendations. One such recommendation, as an example, is going to come up at the next committee meeting in November, is related to the red abalone fishery and in Northern California, and consideration of how the structure for the foundation for marine management strategy, the foundation for management decisions for a future fishery, if and when that stock recovers to the stage that it's ready to be open for fishing, and also consideration of a de minimis fishery, meaning being able to collect a certain number to support research and continued monitoring of the stock. So that is going to be discussed again. There are other regulatory packages, some of which you also heard updates on today. The one area that I don't think we did really talk about is marine aquaculture. That's another area that the Marine Resources Committee is tracking and has discussions about marine aquaculture in state waters. Not Humboldt Bay, so where we're located right now is in close proximity to Humboldt Bay, but in this case, Humboldt Bay is not under the Commission's authority for aquaculture, but the other portions of the state, the Commission does actively consider issuing leases for state water bodies, and so there's discussions around that as well. Finally, I'll touch on briefly on one of the special projects of the committee. The committee has a multi-year process of considering how to better reflect the needs of coastal fishing communities, and we want to emphasize that that we recognize that tribes along the coast since the beginning of time have been using and supporting stewardship of coastal resources, and so tribal communities that interact with the coast are also part of the coastal fishing communities, and in some cases actively have businesses associated with that. And so we encourage engagement. So the commission, the committee is currently developing a policy for ultimately for fishing for commission consideration. And that policy highlights subsistence harvest values and other cultural values. And so there is an intersection with tribes. We hope that's our goal. That's our desire to be inclusive of that, in addition to those that are direct to the other participants along the coast of California that have, you know, kind of the fishing heritage associated with some of the many areas along the coast. So that process is underway, and we're just in the process under the leadership of our Sea Grant Fellow, Kimmy Rogers. We're planning for another workshop to be able to have direct engagement on developing what the commission's policy may inform. So just want to note that, and if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to reach out to you directly, but we do send notices out to anyone who is signed up for the Marine Resources Committee listserv, meaning, you know, for any of these committees, you can sign up to receive notices of the agendas, and that way you have a chance to browse the agenda to see if there's a topic that's of particular interest to your tribe or to any members of tribes, and know to be able to plug in on that. So I've covered 2 subtopics on that item, and I went a little bit over to just showcase how the committee work plans and how the committees operate, similar to the tribal committee, but with different areas of focus that make its way ultimately onto the commission's regulatory or just regular agendas for action.
Thank you, Susan. Run through wildlife real quick.
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about the next Wildlife Resources Committee meeting, which is scheduled for September 15th in Arcadia, but we'll have an online Zoom component, so people can attend that way as well. We will be going through our 6 periodic regulations. These are things that we do every year, and getting potential committee recommendations on all of those, including upland game birds, mammal hunting, waterfowl hunting, Central Valley sport fishing, Klamath River Basin sport fishing, and inland sport fishing. We'll be going over 3 regulation rulemaking packages, regulation change rulemaking packages for the future. We'll be revisiting the preference points and refunds for hunting tags to go over some of the ideas and suggestions that were deferred, and the department and commission staff will be coming forth with recommendations to the committee for potential committee recommendations on the disposition of some of those suggestions and options. We'll be introducing 2 new regulation change rulemakings upcoming in the future. One for wildlife rehabilitation, the framework and MOU system that the department uses for its wildlife rehabilitation program, and a rulemaking having to do with upland game hunting draws. These are draws that are currently not using the electronic system that the department uses, so it will be a rulemaking to integrate them into the current system that the department uses. We'll be talking about 2 special projects. The first, we'll have further discussion of the American bullfrog and non-native turtle stakeholder engagement project, and the department will be reporting on the development of its bear management plan. That'll be a standing topic for the duration of the development of that plan, and using the WRC as a primary outlet for stakeholder input. So if you're interested in the bear management plan, you can join us at the WRC and both get an update and provide some input. And finally, we'll be getting some potential recommendations on the big game hunting petition that was referred to WRC for recommendation. That's been a longstanding topic that we've had a great deal of discussion on, and potential recommendations around the corner for that in September. And the last thing that I wanted to mention isn't necessarily a WRC item, but I think it's probably of interest to people that are interested in the WRC, and that is the Forum on Wild Pigs in California, which is jointly hosted by the Commission and the Department. It's currently scheduled for the morning of September 22nd. It will be online through Zoom, and we have a portfolio of presenters and panelists to talk about some of the problems and solutions, potential solutions presented by wild pigs in California. It's still being planned, but we expect in September to put up more detailed information, and you can take a look at our at the meetings page in the Commission for more information as it becomes available. And that's all I have for WRC.
Thank you, Ari. Ask our committee chair and or executive director how you'd like to proceed with the rest of the meeting.
Melissa, do you have a report?
I can just quickly, for our last few remaining participants, just want to point them to the Commission website for tomorrow's meeting. There is on the webpage, on the meetings webpage, a list of all of the agenda items for the October meeting of the Commission. And there are a few things that may be of interest to tribes on that agenda. First, it's scheduled for the 12th and 13th of October. It's scheduled to be held in the Truckee area. It's actually over Kings Beach along Lake Tahoe area. Two-day meeting, and the items that I think might be of interest to some of the tribes would be the findings that are going to be ratified hopefully by the Commission for Pacific leatherback sea turtle, as well as findings on the decision to list Shasta snow reef. Those are both pursuant to the California Endangered Species Act. We also have some regulations that are being considered, a notice to establish a 12 consecutive month sport fishing license, which is something that many have been asking for, including tribes. And then adopting a first emergency re-adopt for Southern California steelhead. And that again is a allowing take pursuant to Section 2084 of the Fish and Game Code for a threatened or endangered candidate. And then did I mention Western Joshua Tree? I don't think I did. So the Commission has before it a petition to list Western Joshua Tree as a threatened or endangered species. It had an initial discussion at the last Commission meeting, took public comment, received the department's status review report, etc., and closed the record at the last meeting, but left it open specifically to receive additional tribal input before coming back to the October meeting for a potential decision on whether or not to list. We're in the midst of that process. We have a consultation scheduled for the 23rd of August with the department, the Commission, and those tribes that are interested. We sent letters to all of the tribal chairs in California, and for those that we haven't heard from in the next few days, we will be contacting them to see about their participation. So it'll be the potential addition of a couple of new items. October will not be a heavy agenda, but there's some interesting items on it. And we'll also be looking at setting up another field trip in that area, similar to what we're doing for tomorrow's meeting. And then just a reminder, also available on the website, and also not only on the website on our regulations page, but also in every meeting binder, there is the Commission's regulatory schedule. It's a calendar of all regulatory items that are up for consideration in the next 12 months. That's an important document for identifying when there are opportunities to provide input into the commission's decision-making around regulations. I think what's most key to note, though, is that's kind of the final stop, right? If there's an item of interest, it really is at the committee level typically that we would like to see involvement, and that's what a little bit of what Susan and Ari were talking about. What are the things that the committees are working on currently? Because many of those subject matters will in fact come to the commission at some point in the future as a rulemaking of some sort. So paying attention to what the committees are doing, whether it's tribal, marine, or wildlife resources, is really important if you're interested in regulatory actions by the commission. That rulemaking timetable really does represent sort of the final stop before the commission makes a decision. And there's an awful lot of input, negotiation, dialogue around those subjects through the committees leading up to those rulemaking packages. So just want to reinforce the suggestion to engage actively with all three of the committees in order to stay on top of the work of the commission.
Everybody is extremely busy. Okay. Are there any general public comments that for items not on the agenda or closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No hands.
Okay. Seeing none, that closes our tribal committee meeting for August 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Special thanks to Bear River for hosting us and for all the tribes that stuck around to the very end.